race tonight. Before we do so, we are happy to have you join us for tonight's action. Going to be a lot of chaos and a lot of fun nonetheless. With Andre Grambush in the booth, my name is Kenneth Bueno and Carlos Costa pushing the buttons for the broadcast here tonight. And Andre, back at the place where this season kicked off earlier this year in February, and the aura surrounding this race is still relatively the same, but this time you got to close the regular season out instead of starting it.
Right, the drivers are looking at this race as a wild card race. It's a plate track where anything can happen. But I gotta say, if you were watching the Truck Series race last night, it was one of the cleanest plate races I've seen in a long time, and I think that's because this race is so close to the beginning of the playoffs. These drivers have 100% focus on their goal and making it to the end. So they're doing everything they can to be as consistent as clean throughout this race as they can possibly be. It's going to be interesting, Ken.
Yeah, with the playoffs set, things have remained unchanged in terms of this playoff picture, so no need to worry about bubble drivers. But nonetheless, here is what the playoff picture is looking like at the moment going into this race here at Daytona. Bryson Hixenbaugh continues to lead this entire field. He's got 10 wins in this season, has stayed up there pretty much relatively throughout this entire season. He will be here in the regular season ender. Cameron Stone second, Eric Wineland will be third, Cam Caldwell into fourth, Kevin Steele top five, Preston McRae, Christopher Hahman, Jonathan Delaney being in 8th, Danny Myatt 9th, Damaris Hickenbottom 10th, and 11th, all the way to 16th, Tommy Amos, Josh Coppernall, Ryan Samuelson, Cody Bird, Brian Mabry, and Zach Probst. Those are all the drivers locked in, so obviously no need to worry about drivers getting in or drivers being vulnerable of staying out. But Andre, with everyone clinched, it's really no secret that this race can be just a matter of going for the win and being aggressive rather than making an effort for points with every move you make and trying to stay comfortable.
Absolutely. If you're locked in, you got nothing to lose. You're not losing anything by adding another win sticker to the side of your car, and we know that drivers like Bryson Hixenbaugh, doesn't matter how many of them they have, they want more. So I think you're going to see some crazy lunges, especially as the laps wind down. The aero package with these cars is insane on these plate tracks. You can get a huge draft from even up to about 2 seconds back from the car ahead, which is a lot bigger of a run than you used to be able to get in these old cars. So it's going to be a fun one to watch, Ken.
And as you're looking at the aero shot, you're seeing all the drivers gridding. And of course, we will get to your grid and see exactly where everybody will be starting at the beginning of today's race, right on the grid. Starting on the pole will be the number 6 of Jonathan Delaney. He sets at 46.842, leads into the top of the board. Right alongside him on the outside, the 217 struggled in the past couple races, but trying to look for a better one tonight, the 217 of Jack Durham.
Behind them, it's Dave Fugue Jr. He's had some internet issues these last few weeks, but despite that, he's had speed when he's not been blinking, so I'm curious to see what he can do here. And right alongside him, it's Cecil Green, coming off of a win last week at Dover, seeing if he can make it a twofer here at Daytona.
And then back to row number 3 will be the 31 of Eric Wineland. He starts in the inside of this top 5, but running alongside him, the 25 of Joseph Schiles.
And behind them, it's Patrick Mush and Victor Williams, with a 46.92 and a 47 flat, so very close times between those two.
And then you're looking back to Alex Princeton and Brandon Pierce and Wayne Grassley. That's right. Now what you're seeing in the top 5, 47.045 for Pierce, 47.099 for the 7. And Wayne Grassley, they occupy row number 5.
And behind them, Josh Coppernall and Dalton Mobley. Dalton Mobley finally making a return after being absent for a few weeks, and I think he's going to be coming back hungry.
And then back to row number 7, where you'll find Brian Mabry in the 3 car, one of the playoff drivers we just discussed. And right alongside him in 15th, the 30 of Randy Drumhiller.
Behind them, it's Joseph Lester and Damaris Hickenbottom. Damaris had a lot of consistency and made some smooth moves in the truck race last night, but Joseph Lester was quoted as saying that his car felt too light and he was struggling in that race. So we're going to see if he can maybe pick up the pieces and bring it home here tonight.
And then behind them is Cam Caldwell, Denny Myatt will follow through, then Nicholas Weatherby, Daniel Fields, Joey King, Cameron Stone, Zach Probst, Ryan Samuelson. Lots of playoff drivers, actually. Christopher Hahman, Rich Petrucco, Jason Taylor, Hixenbaugh, McRae, Steele, Cody Bird to round out this entire field for a pretty relatively large field. 32 driver field here at Daytona International Speedway. Off of turn number 4 to be Delaney and Durham, the 2 Mountain Dew machines, and the 2 Camaros will round out the rest of the field as they take the tri-oval. Pace car is off. We are green for the regular season ender here at Daytona. We'll see how things shake out, expecting a lot of chaos.
Those Mountain Dew machines are leading the way, trying to get the charge on those front 2 rows, but it looks like the inside line is going to get a huge run, and Eric Wineland back in P3 pushing the car ahead to try and get up to the leader.
Delaney in the 04, Wineland also behind. Cecil Green will follow through to the inside. The outside still relatively kind of separated there, but they're starting to pick up as one of the drivers. I think that's Cam Caldwell is pushing back through the back straightaway. Don't think he's looking too comfortable, at least where he is, so he's going to move further back the field, maybe expecting a huge wreck early in this race. So Delaney will continue to lead. You're on board with Brandon Pierce a little bit further back on the inside lane, but we're seeing it early on, Andre. Drivers on the inside forming that line quickly, but that outside actually relatively picked it up.
You can get runs on the high side here. It's not easy to do, but you can do it. I think what you're going to see early on, though, is a lot of drivers preferring to be on that bottom line just because it's the safer place to be. If there was a wreck to break out or something was to happen, you got a lot more room to move if you're on that bottom lane, whereas if you're up top and something happens, you're kind of trapped. So I think you're going to see a few of these guys that are trapped up high try to duck down when the opportunity presents itself. It's just a matter of waiting for that opportunity to open up, because right now they're bumper to bumper, and I think they're going to stay that way for a while.
And that opportunity opened up for Jack Durham, so he'll be the new race leader along with the 25 of Shiles. He'll try to work to the outside of Delaney, but still no success. Delaney's got help with all the drivers right behind, but that three-car train is making it work, so we'll be side by side for the race lead. I think Shiles just barely got that race lead and the lap led over the 217. We'll see if he dips down low. And already early, we're seeing this outside lane kick in relatively quickly. More used to seeing the outside lane kind of struggle to pick up, and then as soon as the race starts to progress, you'll see drivers swoop up to the high side. You'll see a lot more, at least close contact. You'll see a lot more drivers forming that line. But early on, Andre, we're seeing that outside lane being strong, as now Delaney, the pole sitter, will dip back and try to stay comfortable where he is.
Right, and this is something you see a lot at plate tracks, especially early on. There's two distinct strategies that drivers tend to go with. You either want to drop back like Delaney did, so that if the wreck happens, you're behind it, or try to get as far ahead as possible, so that if the wreck happens, you're ahead of it. But you never want to be right in the middle. So I think Delaney, he dropped back a few spots, and he thought to himself, you know what, now that I'm not in the lead, it'd probably be safer to be further back. And with so much race left, really, that's probably the smart decision to make. And even if he were to lose the lead pack, if he were to fall out of the draft somehow, we've still got stages coming up at lap 50 and lap 100, so as long as he keeps himself on the lead lap, those cautions will come out and he'll be able to get right back up there with the lead pack as long as he survives. So right now, it's a strategy call for John Delaney.
Definitely a strategy call, but it is not a strategy, at least to stay aggressive, for that number 5 of Princeton in that Chevrolet Camaro, that number 5. Light blue car. He's going to swoop to the lead with the 77 of Dalton Mobley. And Andre, haven't seen Dalton Mobley in a minute. We talked about him at Michigan, was so close to the race win, and he attended there, but he wasn't really in the races ever since. So we didn't see him back at the racetrack, but glad to have him back here at the Galaxy Cup Series for this race. I know that probably very excited for these races along with a lot of these drivers, and I know Mobley, with his success at Michigan, it's always great to see him back on the racetrack, especially on the super speedways. But nonetheless, he's going to try to charge for the race lead. He's going to have help now. He's actually helping the 217 of Jack Durham, who went to the outside, so the Camaros will help each other on the high side. The 25 of Shao is going to push Princeton to the front.
Yeah, you know, we talked, like you said, we talked about Mobley there quite a bit at Michigan, and I believe he said in the interview when we talked to him after the race that he was looking forward to Daytona. Well, I can see why. He's definitely a skilled plate racer. He's worked his way up towards the front and now trying to help that 217, like you mentioned, to take the lead. And I gotta say, I'm very impressed with that high side forming up like they have. It's a large risk to jump up to that outside lane when you see it forming up, because a lot of times, a little bit of contact there between the 32 and the 217. That's going to hold up Mobley a little bit. But as I was saying, when you jump up high, sometimes if the top line doesn't get that run right away, the drivers that are up there will duck down onto the bottom lane and hang you up to dry. So it's kind of a matter of trust. How much do you trust those guys on the high line are going to commit to it and stay up there to hopefully make a charge to the lead? And right now, a lot of trust from those 7 cars in a row on that top line.
That seems to be the talking point whenever you get to tracks like these, tracks like Daytona, Talladega, the super speedways, all the very large tracks that rely on drafts. You have to try and find people to work with. You have to either find teammates or find people you trust on the racetrack, and that's a great point. You mentioned that all these drivers are looking, at least if you're not in a team, you don't really know many people in this session, at least in this race. You're looking at trying to find drivers and trying to hook up with them and trust them in the fact that you guys can work together efficiently and you guys can be comfortable with each other in the draft, for the point that, let's say you want to make a move and they're in close proximity, they're right next to each other, you can make the move with them and you'll be comfortable knowing that they'll have your back, and vice versa. So you'll have that kind of comfortability with those drivers, and we're seeing that already playing into effect as the two drivers leading this little pack right here. That is Delaney and Cam Caldwell, who were two of the drivers who fell all the way back to the field and decided to do that on purpose, probably anticipating a large wreck at the front of this field. But coming to lap 8, we still have a battle for the race lead and a lot more separation, at least through the bottom line. The two cars in tandem working together.
Yeah, you mentioned separation. That's something that happens a lot at these tracks. Usually you'll get 2 or 3 large packs forming as drivers begin to fall out of the draft or just fall a little bit too far back. But the lead pack is usually the biggest one because that's where everybody wants to be. They want to try and contend for the lead. And I think that's what you're seeing right now is you've got this 10 or so car bunch up front before it splits back that second pack. Just a revolving door for the lead, it seems like, as drivers keep making lunges and making moves, and then immediately a driver will get a run next to them. So a lot of draft action going on, and looks like the top line now has actually fallen apart a little bit. Only 3 cars on the top line now, as the 32 is going to duck down pretty close to the apron there. He was already on the low side, but he went to the low side. Now we're going to see if that top line is going to try and integrate themselves to the bottom as they've lost their momentum and lost some of the power they had when they had more cars with them.
So 7 cars in this main group, and then you look all the way back to Brian Mabry in the 3 car who leads this second pack, and as soon as they start to battle side by side, you'll see the rest of that second group start to pick up. They'll catch to the back of the 38 of Prince or the 9 of Lester, or whoever's at least in the tail end of that group, as now Shiles in the 25, that mystery machine Ford Mustang, is going to try to go for the race lead. He went to the high side with Durham to help, and now the 5 is going to have a battle to pick with the Mustang right alongside. So they'll be side by side for the race lead. Early on, lots of drivers pushing and shoving, at least in terms of getting to the lead, falling back just a little bit, trying to change for the lead. But now they're 2 by 2 all the way back. They'll single file out, and now they're starting to pick up. Everyone's going to start to get bunched up here very soon, Andre.
Yeah, Shiles definitely hung out to dry on that high side. He was one of the last drivers to try and stay up there. He's got a lot of room behind him to the next pack on the high side, so he's going to have to try and stick it out and try and not lose any ground. It gets a little bit squirrely coming out of the corner. These cars will get very loose, especially if you don't have anybody in front of you to give you that little bit of aero push. The handling changes so much when you're in clean air like he is now. As right now, Wayne Grassy has caught up to him, and now that outside line is starting to form up again, and I think they're going to make a second lunge at it.
Yeah, the 25 of Shiles at least had something to fall back on because he was all the way by himself. As soon as everyone behind him that were helping him, at least the 217 of Durham and some of the other guys further back, they went to the inside line, but the 25 at least did not have to worry because now the 7 of Wayne Grassy is helping him with the group to follow. So we'll see lots of more drivers in this group as well. They're 2 by 2 pretty much all the way down until you get a little further back in this field. There's on board with Wayne Grassy currently in this mix. And Andre, we talk about, like you said, dirty air, clean air, lots of things going on with the air on these race cars because these cars are so aerodynamically dependent that you have the dirty air from the cars in front of you. You can gain ground by, of course, getting the slipstream, getting the draft on the drivers. That's what these tracks are all about, is drafting with people. And the air can really take into effect on whether you're able to get, to this race lead, you're able to side draft, you're able to gain a little more ground, and especially if you have damage, it can hold you back a good ton. So we're seeing a lot of drivers working that air at least around, and Shiles got to the race lead right in front of Princeton in the 5, but here comes the 7 of Grassy with a couple Camaros to follow, and of course, last week's race winner, Cecil Green, in the mix as well.
Yeah, that 25 machine of Shiles dipped low as soon as he got the lead, as soon as he was clear, and that's what you're going to see a lot of. Obviously, the guy who's pushing him is going to hope that he's going to stay up high and continue to work with him until they're all clear. But this early on in the race, I think that's a little bit unrealistic. You're gonna see a lot of drivers doing what Shiles did right there. So now Wayne Grassy leading the outside pack, getting help from the 17, and hopefully he's gonna try to make the same move as the 25 machine. But it almost looks like we're gonna go 3 wide for just a moment as the 49 car, Cecil Green, goes to the high side up there, just peeking his nose up there, seeing what he could get away with. And now I think he's on the hunt.
Cecil Green, we mentioned last week's winner at Dover, along with the rest of his team, F5 Motorsports, and what a debut they had last week, and we were very impressed on what they were able to put out. They were finished 1-3-4. Of course, Bryson Nixonball was in that little mix as well at the end due to the fuel strategy, but nonetheless, F5 Motorsports put on a great show at Dover last week, and they're coming into this race, and I kept thinking about this before we got this race underway, is how much confidence they were going to get, how much of a boost they will have in their confidence, knowing that they were so good at Dover last week. Going into this race at Daytona, they got to feel a little good, Andre, about their finish, so they're trying to get everything they can and continue their stride in this series. And you see Cecil Green working with his fellow teammate Victor Williams. We saw this happen last week at Dover, where all the drivers in that team were all together, Andre. And going into this race, team allegiance, a big factor when you're going into races like these where you have to work with drivers. It's always better to work with teammates rather than, try to pick and choose and try to find any of the drivers out there on the racetrack.
Right, you have to work with somebody at these tracks because you cannot succeed on your own. The draft is simply too important. As wow, the 5 car makes a very close block there on the second place car, but he has reclaimed the lead. But teamwork is very important here, and you got to know, not even just within your team, but just drivers who aren't on your team, who maybe you've worked well with in the past or who are willing to work with you. You got to find help where you can get it, and you're going to see a lot of that. But F5 Motorsports, like you mentioned, coming off of a win, that momentum is huge. When you come into a race after you just won last week, it's a totally different mindset. It's not, can we win this race? It's how can we win this race? So I definitely think that F5 Motorsports is going to be in contention. As the 32 is getting way loose down on the bottom line, that apron will grab you. The tri-oval has a little bit of banking, and if you scrape your splitter on the flat down there, it'll get you sideways like you saw right there. But luckily, everybody able to gather it up. Let's take a look at a replay, Ken.
And you saw the 25 of Schaus, who just looked a little bit further under the double yellow line, and you mentioned that little banking difference can unsettle the car, kind of shift you a little bit more to the left, and that gets your car very loose. But fortunately, nobody else was involved in these incidents. Nobody else was able to fall back. The 17 actually was one of the victims. He falls back a little bit further. That's Christopher Hamann. And it looks like the rest of the field will now single file out. I think after they saw that, Andre, they might have been a little more cautious, like, okay, we got to woe things down just a little bit early in this race. And especially since we go to lap 50 at the end of stage number 1, you kind of think about more of a bigger picture, trying to just get to that stage first and think about what you're going to do after and try to get there first, not make anything too drastic. But we're seeing a swing between these top two. They keep grabbing the lead and then falling back to second, grabbing the lead once again. We're seeing that 25 and that 5 work the lead together, and they're changing each and every laps, and you're on board with one of the drivers a little bit further back behind Hickenbottom. That's the 49 of Cecil Green. And actually, no, there goes Cecil Green to the high side. I think he's going to try and make something work with his teammate. And the 30 of Randy Drumhiller is also going to follow suit, so they'll try to form another line on the high side, as now goes Schaus to the high side, trying to take the lead back away.
And man, that 49 car got a little bit squirrely there. I think that he didn't expect the 25 of Schaus to move up like that, so caught him off guard a little bit. And I tell you what, when you see a car getting sideways ahead of you at 190 mile an hour, that's a bit of a wake-up call. So a lot of these guys up front white-knuckling it as they make their way around this track, one of the fastest tracks on this circuit. And man, I really didn't expect to see this two-wide action this consistently throughout the early portions of the race. We're not seeing a whole lot of patience, and I think that comes back to what you said earlier, Ken. The playoffs are pretty much cinched for everybody who made it. There is not going to be any change in the playoff order depending on how this race finishes. So it's all about the win tonight. Can you get up front? Can you lead laps? Can you win? That's all that matters. And I think that definitely shows with how these guys are driving tonight.
And it's kind of a mix between some of the drivers who are locked into the playoffs already that are up in this main group, and then already playoff drivers who are further back, who tried things more conservatively, like Jonathan Delaney. He was starting on the pole, but he went all the way back to the group further back because maybe he thought it was going to get a little sketchy up front, so he moved a little bit further back. And we have drivers that are in that group. We're seeing guys like Hickenbottom, we're seeing guys like Cody Bird, as now we have some drivers on pit road. It looks to be the 25 to 66 also in there as well. So drivers getting their pit stops, and I think, Andre, if we get this green flag going, we'll see drivers, more, at least in this first group and a little bit further back, start to go down pit road, because if you don't have any cautions, the pit strategy will come into factor. We'll see drivers dip down pit road and get some fresh fuel and tires.
We absolutely will, Ken. The fuel cells are a little bit smaller at plate tracks, at least in real life. I'm pretty sure it's the same in iRacing. So they can't quite go as far as you'd think on fuel. There's no way they're going to make it 50 laps at the end of the stage, so they're going to have to pit at some point. But at a track like this, tires don't quite matter as much as a track like, say, Dover. So short pitting maybe doesn't have much of an advantage on that front, but where short pitting does have an advantage is getting in pit road before anybody else so that there's nobody around you on pit road entry. Because here at Daytona and at Talladega, these plate tracks have some of the most difficult pit road entries on the circuit. You're coming into the pits at over 190 miles an hour, and you got to get it down to 75. The apron is slick. There's a lot of dust and marbles down there. So getting the car under control and not speeding as you slide into the pits is a challenge for anybody, but it's a lot easier when nobody's around you. So you're going to see guys duck in either way before or way after anybody else, just to give them that clear track.
And you're seeing a challenge right now to get around those lap cars. You saw Christopher Hamann was in this group, so guys, at least in this main pack, had to move out of the way, try to get their draft around that 17. And of course, one of the other drivers who pitted along with him as well. They're starting to file on the inside with Wayne Grassi helping them. They are the 2 lap cars in the mix of all the guys on the lead lap. So now we're seeing drivers start to mix in with lap traffic, and you don't really see this too often, but always some cases where, at least on the super speedways, you'll see drivers who are at least all by themselves, or they come out in the right part of the track with a couple of people to work with, so then they form a little draft of their own, and they can mix in with the drivers on the lead lap, and it could kind of signal danger if you're some of these drivers trying to get around. Maybe miscommunication can send you around, or maybe result in some contact. But right now, we are seeing the F5 Motorsports teammates of Cecil Green and the 07 of Victor Williams. They slingshotted all the way to the race lead in that last lap or so, and they are now the top 2 to be on this racetrack, right with Joseph Schals and Alex Princeton right behind. He had help from Hickenbottom and Probst on the top side. So now the 2 teammates, we talked about how dominant they were at Dover, now trying to stay dominant here at Daytona.
And a slingshot it was, as they made a crazy push through the tri-oval. You saw when we rode on board with them, they were getting really squirrely trying to push each other, but it definitely paid off. The amount of momentum that they were able to carry right up to the front of the field was absolutely astonishing. And now F5 Motorsports are back up front, as we saw so much of back at Dover. And honestly, getting to the lead at this point might be a bit of a strategy call, because right now they don't have to worry about anybody in front of them checking up or possibly messing up their pit road entry when they come into pit. So they can have the bottom of the track, they got nobody in front of them, they can dive off the track when they come into pit and not really have to worry about it. If you're a car that's up on the high line right now, you got to think about trying to get to the bottom, because you can't enter the pits from the top. So you'll see cars that get trapped on the track for 2 or 3 extra laps than what they really want, because they can't enter the pits. So I think you're going to see these guys get single filed as much as they can as F5 Motorsports continues to lead the way, and we just wait for this pit sequence to come to its conclusion.
We are on the way to the pit cycle beginning to start. Unless we have a yellow, then of course that'll re-rack all the field, and then they'll have that opportunity to go down pit road without worrying about maybe going a lap down or losing any track position and waiting for it to cycle further down the road. So we'll try and see what they do. And you mentioned that they were going all the way to the inside, at least to get that headway in terms of going on a pit road and not having to worry about trying to cram into the inside lane to get to pit road. Well, they're already doing so a little bit earlier now in this run before they get to the fuel window. So I think all of them drivers, at least the top 2 and the rest of the guys, they have that general consensus that, okay, we'll stick to the bottom, we'll try and stay here for as long as we can. And speaking of which, we have drivers slowing down for pit road. Damaris Hickenbottom and Alex Princeton are going to be the 2 drivers to work down pit road. Looks like nobody else will follow, but Andre, we're seeing the pit cycle start to open up, and now we'll just have to keep an eye on whether the rest of the field will do the same.
I'm definitely curious to see if the 5 got a penalty or not. He locked up his tires a little bit on entry, and he was closing in on Hickenbottom. So, and now he's overshot his pit stall, so either way, a disastrous stop. That little bit of time that he lost on pit road is going to translate to a lot of track position, potentially, especially if he doesn't have anybody to draft with when he exits. But we are now halfway through the stage exactly. We're on lap 25, and as the 5 car makes his way off of pit road, the F5 Motorsports team is going to stay out on the track. They're not diving down this time. In fact, I didn't see anybody come down this time, I don't believe. So that was an interesting call by the 5 and Hickenbottom in that machine. Damaris is actually still on pit road, it seems like. Ken, what do you got down there?
Well, it looks like he's stuck down there. He went down pit road along with Princeton. We saw them go down, but now he is just stuck on pit road. Possibly, and there's an issue there for the 09 of Hickenbottom. He's one of the playoff drivers locked in, and right now he's going to exit his pit stall, so a lengthy pit stop for that 09 Ford Mustang. He's going to definitely lose a lot of ground and track position coupled with that, and now that he's on pit road, maybe going to have to bank on a yellow. There's Alex Princeton right in front of the rest of this field. They'll try to go around, and a single file they will. The top 3 with Green, Williams, and Shiles will work around, and there's Pierce and Probst and the rest of the guys working around. So there's the 5 going a lap down on the racetrack. And lap number 27, we're continuing to follow through with this fuel window, and the driver's going to start looping down pit road. But possibly a little strategy there by the 5. Maybe short pit early and get something, or maybe just trying to think a little bit further ahead than these guys. Try not to pit the same way, because as soon as they go down pit road, he has that opportunity to stay out just a little bit longer and possibly get track position out of it.
Absolutely. This stage is going to be one stop regardless, but like you said, coming in early, that definitely put him in position to just kind of let these guys peel off in front of him. Now he can lead the way once these guys dip down. Looks like the 7 peaked low. He went down to the apron, but he decided not to pit. I'm not sure if he just got loose or if he was faking out a pit. That is something you see sometimes. You see these guys fake out a pit stop just to get the guys behind him to maybe pull it in a little bit early. But the 7 car of Wayne Grassley is going to stay on the track and still single file for the most part. And I think it's going to stay that way until this pit sequence has concluded. We mentioned you have to be on the bottom, so nobody really wants to be trapped up top when the pit sequence comes along. But now it looks like we're coming up on some lapped cars. That is the 20 machine of Danny Myatt and the 31 of Eric Wineland in danger of going a lap down. If they get lapped before these guys pit, that means the 5 car may not be the lucky dog anymore, and he might get trapped a lap down. So this is going to be eventful for the 5 car, depending on how it shakes out.
And it's going to be eventful down pit road. There go the leaders, along with that, with Probst in the 162. He's going to follow. That'll leave Brandon Pierce to lead this entire field. And there goes the F5 Motorsports teammates. There's Victor Williams, Cecil Green, the 25 of Joseph Shiles. They're also going to work together, go down pit road, find their pit box, and get those tires and fuel. But also, Andre, nobody really wants to worry about pit strategy. They want to go for the win. They want to stay in the pack. They want to think more about how they will race. They want to try to approach it in a different way in terms of they want to figure out where their positioning will be, maybe drivers they're looking at to trust in the draft. And when you have pit strategy in the mix, you kind of have to tend to it, but you don't really want to. You kind of want to get it out of the way before anything else, and then you can then focus on racing with the drivers around you and trying different things to go all the way to the checkered flag at lap 160, or at least for now, work onto the stage end at lap number 50. There's the 30 of Randy Drumhiller, one of the playoff drivers in the playoff picture, so he is locked in. He will now dip down pit road, so he will be one of the other drivers to get his pit service, and we'll just see now as the 25 of Shiles will exit pit road. Cecil Green and Williams are to follow. You see him getting freight trained by the rest of this field in the draft, Andre, and now it's just all dependent about getting this thing out of the way. As soon as you get it out of the way, now you just have to worry about running all the way to stage 1, at least the end of stage 1, and trying to race your way there and trying to take a win out of it.
Right, and you know, there's another element to the pit strategy at these plate tracks that you don't really see anywhere else, and it's worrying about where you come out in relation to other cars, because if you come out by yourself, like it appears Cecil Green has, he's not in the draft, which means he's going on average about 7 to 8 miles an hour slower around this track than everybody else. Now, if he had come out with another car or in a pack, then he would have had some speed to carry and had the draft and not lost any time.
Whoa, we got a huge wreck off turn number 2. That was Randy Drumhiller. There was Brandon Pierce that shoved right to the back of the 09 of Damaris Hickenbottom, and a huge wreck coupling with drivers that went down pit road and drivers on the lead lap. It all started right here with Randy Drumhiller, who went around, I think, just trying to get out of the pit exit, and then everyone just right in the middle of the field, everyone gets involved. There's a 25 of Shiles. I saw Dalton Mobley spinning down the track. Bizarre situation there. We'll go on board with Drumhiller, and you see him go around here, and then just a passenger from here on out.
Yeah, he got loose on that apron, which is easy to do when you're coming out of the pit road. Unfortunately, he didn't lock up his brakes, it doesn't seem like, when he started to get loose, so he slid up in front of traffic, and it was just a parking lot after that. So, unfortunate break for a lot of these drivers early on, not even to the end of stage 1, and we've already seen potentially the big one.
That was a huge, huge wreck. You're on board with King in the 25, and there is large contact there. And you see him, you see, I think Dalton Mobley's in that picture as well. I saw the 09 of Hickenbottom. He also was involved. Man, tough incident and lots of stack-ups. You see the 30 go around here, and then the rest of the field just piles in. I think just a last-ditch effort for most of them to get out of the way. I saw Hickenbottom trying to swerve out of the way, at least to get in terms of their drivers slowing down. Huge pileup, and a caution on lap number 32 will rack this entire field up and bring them into the large group. But now, Andre, the question is, what does this do for the drivers who went down pit road already? Do they stay out? Are they stuck a lap down? What's really going to happen here for those guys?
Well, definitely they're going to stay out. There's no reason to come down pit road. But Alex Princeton, if my timing and scoring is correct, should be the lucky dog. He should get a free pass and get back on the lead lap as he's the first car lap down currently. So that'll put him right back up in the fray. But behind him, you've got Daniel Fields, Christopher Hamann. That 17 machine was up front at one point, and now he's going to be trapped a lap down, at least until the next caution. And even still, he's going to have to try and defend that lucky dog spot and stay the first car a lap down. But he's got some challenge from behind to do that. And okay, we got another replay here. Another view of this from the perspective of the 217.
Yeah, this is Jack Durham. There's the 27, Rich Petrucco. They were also involved in this as well. You see them spinning down the back straightaway. Luckily, no damage. And look at Brian Mabry in the 3, getting out of that full speed right through the middle of those drivers as they were spinning down the back straightaway. Luckily, no damage for the 217. Look at Mabry's onboard cam going through this. You see him start to slow down, dip all the way down the racetrack, and look how close to Mobley. And now look how close he was to all those drivers just spinning around them. Easily could have been a victim if somebody just went down and hit him at the wrong place at the wrong time. But luckily, Mabry was able to survive out of that one. A huge wreck off turn number 2. Really not much space to go through. And especially in that large pack with the lap cars and the cars on the lead lap, you don't really have much here at Daytona International Speedway. So a caution early in this race. We're now just going to have to see whether pretty much anyone goes down pit road and what the outlook is going to be from here on out. Cecil Green is there as well, and he is currently your race leader at the moment. We have a couple drivers exiting pit road. There's the 04 in the mix as well. Hicksonbaugh is there. Rich Petrucco. There's the 44 of Kevin Steele. We saw a couple other drivers out there as well. Obviously, the 38 of Brandon Pierce, who had front-end damage after he still actually has front-end damage from that, and he's going to try to work that through the rest of the night. So large wreck on lap number 33. We're going to have at least a 20 or so lap stint, but a little bit under 20 laps before we get to lap number 50 in this end of stage number 1. So all dependent on what's going to go down here as the field will continue to shake up. But that was a large incident there, Andre. I think we were anticipating the big one in a different fashion, not in the middle of the pit cycle. We were probably looking at least all the lead lap cars in the huge pack that we saw when we got the green flag of this race. Drivers, possibly the big one happening from there. But I think very, very different situation from here on out. I think maybe a different perspective now that this wreck has gotten underway.
Definitely, and I think now that the field is thinned out a little bit, that might give some of these guys a little bit more confidence. But you're right, that isn't really how we expected to see the big one. It's not often you see somebody get loose coming off a pit road, and much less with that happening right in front of the entire field. So just a strange situation and very unfortunate. But right now, that has put a lot of drivers in a precarious situation. You've got the drivers who were caught up in that, obviously, a lot of their days are done. A couple of those guys may be able to get their cars fixed up and come out. But other drivers were trapped a lap down because of that. So definitely shook up the picture of this race entirely with that incident. And it's going to take a while for this to get sorted out. And a lot of drivers have a challenge ahead for the rest of the night.
So we've got 1 to green all the way to turn number 4, and the pace car will come off. We'll take the green flag for what may be the final stint, at least to the end of stage 1 in lap 50. 16 laps until we get there. Will there be a caution from here on out? We'll just have to see, but we have F5 Motorsports lining the first and second row on the inside lane. Zach Probst will also follow to row 2, and the 37 will be up top. So pace car will be off. The 49 of Cecil Green will work with his teammate on this green flag, and we're back green on a restart. The first restart of the evening, lap number 35. We'll see if we get all the way to the end of stage 1.
And it was a massive jump for the inside line, putting the outside line in the dust. I think at this point, the outside line's only option is to try to integrate to the bottom and regroup later on and figure something out. But I tell you, this 37 car might be the car to make the top line come in. As you can see, he's going high. He's getting the side draft on the 07. And now he's done his part. He's just waiting for anybody to jump up and go with him, hopefully, so that he doesn't get hung out to dry.
He's going to have help from Joseph Lester in the 9 car, but the 37 found that opening back, probably not too confident in the outside lane, so he dips back right behind the 07 of Victor Williams and right in between him and the 31 of Eric Wineland. But what we're seeing up here, Andre, lots of mixes of drivers who are either in the playoffs and drivers who are kind of on the outside. We're seeing some playoff drivers here. Of course, you see Wineland there. You're seeing Danny Myatt here. You're seeing a couple other drivers there as well. But then you also see Wayne Grassy. You're seeing the 07 of Williams, the 49 of Cecil Green, the 162 of Zach Probst. So lots of playoff drivers and at least non-playoff drivers in the mix as well. Jack Durham is a little bit further back there as well. He's a playoff. Oh no, he's not a playoff driver, but nonetheless, lots of drivers at least in this mix. And that kind of begs the question that I was going to ask, a little bit earlier, probably, that if you're a playoff driver, since everyone's locked in, do you have that aggressivity? Do you try to be aggressive? Do you try to, go guns blazing for the win? Or do you kind of maintain with that comfortable mindset, trying to lay back all the way to the end of this race? Is it something that maybe you want to handle a little bit later, be aggressive later in this race when you have that final stint, not worrying about pitch strategy, not worrying about tires, or not worrying about pretty much anything else in terms of that nature, and it's all going to be racing from there on out? Is there somewhat of a different approach when you have, the playoffs locked in as opposed to the non-playoff drivers who are just going to go for it?
Oh, definitely. In my experience, like I mentioned earlier, there's two safe places at a plate track: the very front and the very back. And it's up to the driver where they want to be. It's obviously a lot easier to drop to the back and ride around and wait for the big one to happen in front of you than it is to try and charge the lead and hold it, especially with all the blocks you got to throw when people get those charges, and you got to try and stall out their momentum. But if you can lead some laps, it kind of shows everybody, hey, I'm up here, I've got speed, and you can definitely play some mind games with the field as you throw these blocks and just take utter control of it. Now, going back to the 20 machine there of Myatt, that is a driver that caution absolutely helped. Because if you remember, right before that caution came out, I was talking about how he was in danger of going a lap down. The leaders were about 3 car lengths behind him when that all happened. So if that caution hadn't come out, he might not be up here where he is in P6 challenging for a race lead. So definitely a heartbreaking incident for a lot of guys, but also a lucky break for a few.
And at 12 laps to go until we get to the end of stage 1 at lap 50. Cecil Green continues to lead this field up until you get to Jack Durham. So 8 cars in this main group. And then Wayne Grassy follows suit all the way behind. Kevin Steele now. Bryson Hixenbaugh, who we didn't really talk about at the beginning of this race because he started all the way back in 29th when we dropped the green flag here. And now all the way to 11th, he gained a lot off of that huge wreck off of turn 2. You see his Old Spice and his Sprite paint scheme on a Chevrolet Camaro, rocking it this week. And Bryson Hixenbaugh was so close to the win at Dover last week. We saw him battling with Tanner Love and Cecil Green right at the end, as we have damage to the 25 of Shiles, who was involved in that incident, so he's going to try and lay back on the rest of this field. But Bryson Hixenbaugh, I think, gained a lot from this. And, staying in the draft right now, I think he's in a very comfortable spot with a bunch of drivers going single file. Not much contention for the race lead right now.
Right, in this pack that Bryson Hixenbaugh is in, they're right on the edge of being in the draft of the lead pack. So if they step on it and they really work together and they stay single file and maybe push each other down these straightaways, they could get to the lead pack. But right now, I know Bryson Hixenbaugh, he probably wants to get to the front, but these guys ahead of him might be thinking, you know what, I'm fine with being in the second pack. I'm fine being back here because when they wreck up there, or if they wreck up there, I got plenty of time to react to it and know where to go. So again, it just comes back to differing strategies. Where do you want to be? Where do you think the safest place is? And at what point in the race do you finally turn on that aggression? And I think for every driver, that point is a different point in the race. Some drivers turn on that aggression from lap 1, and some drivers don't really turn it on until there's 10 to go because they just don't think it's worth it. So a lot of different strategies, a lot of different ideologies when we come to these tracks. But it looks like the lead pack is pulling away slightly from this second pack with Hixenbaugh, Wayne Grassy, and Kevin Steele. Kevin Consistency Steele trying to get up to the 7 car and maybe push him a little bit to try and catch up to that lead pack, but I just don't know if it's going to be possible at this point, especially with so few laps left in the stage.
And with the groups kind of forming together, you're watching 8 cars in this main group as opposed to probably 4 or 5, maybe even less with that second group all the way back to Wayne Grassy in the number 7. So you're seeing 4 cars right here versus the 8. You're seeing a large difference in the amount of cars, and that certainly helps or possibly will determine how much momentum you will have. If you have the 8 cars in a line, you can gain ground on guys in front of you, or if you're in the lead, pull away from the guys a little bit further back. And then if you're a smaller group, like you see where Hixenbaugh, Cody Bird, and those guys are at the moment, Wayne Grassy there as well, Kevin Steele, you're looking at 4 cars, which is considerably fast, but then compared to the 8 cars and compared to the guys even further behind where they have a larger group, they're going to be kind of stuck in a sandwich, trying to catch up this main group, but then also probably falling back to the guys behind. maybe will they get by? Will they try to try a different strategy to get by around you? Or are you looking to fall back to their bumper and stick with that main group, try to catch up to the guys up front? We're seeing a couple of drivers now sling to the outside. Durham, I saw making the move. Joseph Lester has been the helper each and every time. I saw Danny Myatt look up there as well, but he didn't find much success, so he's going to be fall back right behind Zach Probst. And with just 8 laps to go in this stage, it is all F5 Motorsports 1-2. Jason Taylor 3rd, Eric Wineland 4th, and then a battle for 5th between Probst and Durham. Lester and Myatt also battling for the position right behind. So they're going to work together, and we're getting close to the end of the stage. Andre, at this point, you're pretty much just thinking about getting to the stage, getting it over with, and start preparing for the next stage up to lap 100.
Absolutely. You know, you mentioned Joseph Lester always being the helper, always jumping out with whoever wants to do it and trying to push them to the lead. You know what he's doing right there? He's putting karma in the bank, because in doing so, everybody's seeing him do this. They know that he's going to be the guy who, if you jump out, he's going to go with you and he's going to help you. So later on in the race, when those pushes become more and more valuable, he can pretty much be sure that these guys who are racing around him will kind of owe him in a way, and they'll jump out with him and try to make that pass happen as they're coming up on lap traffic. So we're going to be 3 wide momentarily as the lap traffic does a fantastic job holding his line up top. It is, I can't even describe how scary that is to be a lapped car at these tracks and have cars coming up behind you 2 wide, and you have to hold such a narrow and specific line. It's not an easy task, and I definitely, whoa, 20 car way sideways, waving to the infield spectators momentarily, but he gathered it up. That was extremely close, but impressive save by that 20 machine, Danny Myatt.
We're going to have to look at that once more. That was a wild save by the 20 of Danny Myatt. You saw the 9 of Lester pushing him. Jack Durham was also there to help, and then just about there, so close to making contact with the 162 of Probst. Luckily, no contact between the two, and luckily they were able to continue on their way. We're going to be an in-car cam. You see how much the wheel will be into the tri-oval. You see right about there, he has to wheel it back to the right to keep it straight, and a beautiful job by Danny Myatt. When you're going upwards of 190 miles per hour, almost 200 miles per hour on these tracks with the draft, those little movements, those little shakeups, those little movements in the wheel can mean so much, or they can really hurt you, because you can accidentally overcorrect at such high speeds that you can go up into the outside wall, and that can end your night for sure. But you know, those little things are always something crazy. We got a crash right at the front of the field. Victor Williams, Cecil Green, the rest of the guys in this main pack are around. Caution waves for the second time tonight. We're just short of the stage end, lap number 50. We had a huge wreck involving a lot of those drivers. Contact between, I think, Wineland, a couple of the drivers a little bit further back. I saw Taylor in there. Cecil Green going backwards. Victor Williams. Jack Durham got around that, but we'll take another look. They were going 2 wide here. Wineland was on the top side, supported by Taylor, and then Taylor gets into the 07 of Williams, who gets into the 31, who gets into the 49. Pretty much a chain reaction there started, and all those drivers go around, and damage to most of those race cars. Unfortunate situation. Here's on board with Williams. You see him going down the racetrack, kind of keep it straight, and he saves the race car, luckily, with just bare damage there. And you see the rest of the field crashing right behind. And guess what, Andre? That means the rest of the field will be back up. No need to worry about 4 cars versus 8, because now a lot of those drivers are around and have damage.
Man, that 07, what a close call with those cars sliding behind him. But right now, I think Victor Williams is going to have the weight of F5 Motorsports on his shoulders, because that 49, Cecil Green, has a lot of rear-end damage. I think he backed it into the wall pretty hard. And, you know, if we were at a 1.5 miles or a short track, I'd say it's not that big of a deal. But at these plate tracks, we already talked about how aero-dependent these cars are. And when you got your spoiler sticking up 2 feet higher than it really should, that's going to hold you back quite a bit. So I think Cecil Green has no choice but to pit this time, try to get as much of that damage fixed as he can. And for right now, it's going to be Victor Williams trying to carry the team on his back.
He's going to have the weight on his shoulders for his team in their second race in the Galaxy Cup Series. But meanwhile, he will follow Danny Myatt and the drivers right behind him to go down pit road. Lots of them, of course, getting damage fixed, but most of them just topping off pretty much in the end of this, getting fresh tires, trying to set themselves up for the end of the stage. You're probably looking at a little bit of a shootout right to the end of stage number 1, and then, of course, setting all the way up to stage number 2 when we go all the way to lap 100. You see the rest of this field now following suit. There's Brian Mabry, Cecil Green, the 24 of Weatherby also there as well. Lots of drivers that were in this second group. Pretty much all these drivers that were in that second pack and that third pack actually behind Hixenbaugh and the rest of them Wayne Grassy there as well. They're all going to be into pit road, and out of pit road, it'll be the 20 of Danny Meyer first off. The 24 Weatherby, I think, might have missed his stall, so he's going to have to go one more time around, find it, and then get to the pit service already. But Danny Meyer, the first one off of pit road by a large margin.
Everybody coming down pit road this time, and that basically confirms that none of these guys are going to have to pit at the stage end, so they're going to be able to stay out, keep their track position. I think another thing you're going to see for a lot of these guys on pit road is they're going to stay in their stall well after their service has ended, simply because they don't want to come out mid-pack. That's the most dangerous place to be in these races. So these guys are going to wait. You can see the 64 crawling off of pit road at a mere 20 miles an hour. I think he's trying to give these guys time to pull out ahead of him, but at some point you have to go. Otherwise, you risk going a lap down. So they're kind of playing chicken at this point, seeing who's going to go first.
Yeah, kind of a I'll let you buy. No, I'll let you buy. You know, drivers trying to get themselves around. And you mentioned earlier in this race, you said the most comfortable parts in this racetrack, at least when you're in the pack, is at the very front, at the very back. I think a lot of drivers are thinking about the very back to stay there because of the amount of chaos we've seen in this race already. So I think they probably have that in mind and saying, you know, I'll stay back a little bit further now and just try to get out of the way, try to focus on my race now at the moment, try to turn on the switch and flip the switch as soon as we get to lap 100 and at least that stint to the end of this race. But it looks like we're going to pretty much end this stage in a timely fashion, and we've got the 1 to green signal, so we'll have just a little bit of a stint until we get to the stage end. Danny Myatt will be in control of this field. Jack Durham to his outside. We'll have the rest of the field doubling up. So lap 50 right there around the corner. They're going to be looking at it very, very soon. We'll talk to the stage winner just as soon as it ends. We'll have it here for you at Daytona International Speedway up to the rest of this race. So, Andre, we saw the first kind of stint of this race. We're now seeing the end of stage 1, so we already know what's happened in these last 50 laps. I think at some point I was going to mention this, but unpredictability. You're looking at, we saw the drivers, lap cars and cars on the lead lap getting into trouble. We're seeing those wrecks. We saw that wreck in that main pack, which we didn't expect to the end of that stage. We were probably anticipating they were going to go green all the way to the end, but they didn't. And now we're stuck with this at the moment. We're going to get to the lap number 100 in the next stage. Is there really anything to watch for, especially going into that second segment?
If I was one of these drivers, I'd be a little bit more timid at this point, because we've had 2 big accidents that were kicked off by just the most minor of mistakes, and the field hasn't really thinned out. A lot of these guys that have been involved in incidents have been able to get their cars patched up and get back out on the track. So it's still as dangerous out there as ever, and I think these guys kind of had a wake-up call right there, and they think, you know, even if I'm up front, you know, 49, he had the lead. I don't think he expected to be turned around and backing it up into the wall like he was. So you're going to see these drivers be a little bit more cautious from here on out until the end of the race, I think, Ken.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that works up. But meanwhile, we've got a 1-lap shootout to lap number 50. Danny Myatt, and the 217 will be at the front row. Green flag will be back out. Second restart. Brandon Pierce is now in this group as well after having damage from that first incident. It looks like it's not really harming him that much, as Wayne Grassy will now try to help. The 31 of Weiland, the 24 of Weatherby, and the 04 and the 217 will now file out single file. The 04 will be the only one left to the high side to try and find that opening to the inside, or at least trying to find someone to help him, maybe looking for a couple of the drivers to work with and try to make a move for that last stint. We're coming to 3 and 4. We've got Myatt at the front of the field. Looks to be single file all the way to the stage 1 end.
And what a turnaround, like I mentioned, from at risk of going a lap down to now leading the race at the end of the stage. Quite an impressive comeback for Danny Myatt in the 20, and it's well-deserved. He's had a lot of speed, but just not quite the luck to carry it home these last few weeks, and now he's leading the pack.
And coming to the stage end of lap number 50, Danny Myatt will be in control of this field. The Pierce right behind him, Wayne Grassy. They'll be all 3, 4, and then 2 wide with the 04 and the 31, so all single file throughout the rest of this field. We'll see how this stage ends, and you see how much separation there is now between this first group in the 04 and the 3 of Mabry. They'll start to pick up a little bit more with the draft now that they have the 04 to help them. There's the 162 of Probst trying to get to the high side, and Danny Myatt controlling this field into 3 and 4, and now with the rest of the field coming right behind. They'll come off of turn number 4, coming to the stage end. Danny Myatt will be at the front of this field, and we'll try to find the signal to the caution flag at the end of this stage. we'll just have to see whether the yellow flag will come out very, very soon. We're just kind of waiting for it at this point, and whether it will come out. But I don't think we will have the stage end. I think it ended already. So we'll still stay green, at least we might, at the front of this field.
So that is interesting. We're going to stay green. I guess they decided to end that stage under caution. And that's kind of big for the 20 car, because now he's controlling the field and he doesn't have to worry about another restart. He can just try and stay in the lead and make the blocks that he needs to make when these guys get runs. And I'll tell you, these guys are really pushing each other. If you look at the front of that 7 car, he's got a little bit of damage. It's a little bit crinkled up. And that's not because he was in a wreck. It's just because they are pushing each other so hard to carry as much speed as they can around this track. And I tell you what, this front pack is pulling away from the second pack right now. And we're pretty early on in this stage now that we know that this last stage has ended. We got a long way before the next confirmed caution. So if you lose the lead pack now, if you fall out of the draft, that could be disastrous, because right now you got enough time to potentially go a lap down. And obviously none of these drivers want that to happen.
And we have the pit cycle also rather in this stage, and also we had Danny Mayan, who was he's the stage winner. So we have that confirmed now by the officials and the rest of the guys up there trying to monitor this race. So Danny Mayan will be your stage 1 winner and continuing to lead this field with Pierce right behind. And he mentioned damage, and I was kind of thinking about that because I see Brendan Pierce with heavy front end damage, and it's not affecting him really that much. I was going to talk about how, you know, these cars are so aerodynamically dependent that if you have a little bit of damage, it could hold you back. It could give you a little more drag. You'll be a little bit slower all by yourself. But at least with Brandon Pierce, he has the help right there, and he's got the draft to his advantage, so he's able to stay within this draft even with the damage. And also the 7-wing Grassy has a little bit of a crinkle on the front end. He's got some damage as well, but he's still sticking up with the rest of these guys in this first pack. And now we're seeing the F5 Motorsports teammates on the back bumper camera of Danny Mayan. They are now slingshotting to the front of the field just like they did a little bit earlier in this race. Going to try to take the race lead away. Now hooked together. They have been inseparable ever since.
What a huge run. They passed almost 5 cars in a single shot right there. The setups these guys got to have are absolutely insane, as Cecil Green is going to nose out the 20 car, but he's not quite going to get clear. It might take him a little bit longer, as the 217 now is going to join them on the high side, trying to form that up. Here comes the 24, the 162. Looks like there's more cars on the high side now than the bottom. So that is not good news for Danny Mayan, but it's fantastic news for F5 Motorsports as they continue their push to the front.
5 cars on the high side versus 4 on the inside. Wineland is stuck a little bit with a little bit of separation between him and the 7-wing Grassy, possibly allowing for somebody, if they aren't very comfortable on the high side, they will be they have that opening to go down. And as soon as I say that, Zach Probst will do that, so he will be to the bottom following behind Wayne Grassy. So now it'll be 5 versus 4. This time the roles are reversed. This time with 5 cars on the inside, 4 cars to the outside, and you see how much of a run they get through the shortest way around the racetrack, because Andre, there's nothing really better than the shortest way around this racetrack, right to the double yellow line, sticking there the entire way around the racetrack. It's easily the shortest way around, and it easily gives you the run going into the corners, because obviously since you're going the shorter distance, you'll have a little bit of an edge. But even on the outside, you have a little bit of contention. Of course, you have side draft from the guys right to the bottom. If you have help, of course, you have the driver pushing right behind you, but then you also have the runs off the corners. You're able to get that run off of the tri-oval, off of turn 1, off of turn 4, and so on and so on. So you'll have those drivers at least getting a little bit of advantage sticking through, as you're seeing with the 49 and the 07, continuing to hang with the guys down low, and they're making it work at the moment. But Danny Mayan continues to control this field at the moment, and you see that separation, and now just 3 seconds between Durham at the end of this one and Petrucco all the way back in 9th.
You know, you mentioned the runs coming out of the corner. That's a great point, because coming out of the corner is one of the best places to pass at these plate tracks, because when you get that banking shift where you're going from that high banking down to practically nothing, the car gets a little bit unsettled, and you have to hold the wheel as straight as possible to prevent it from getting a little bit weightless and a little bit loose. So if you make an attack coming out of the corner on the high side or even on the bottom, the person you're passing is not going to be bold enough usually to try and make a quick block when their car is that unsettled, that unstable. So you're kind of catching them with their pants down if you try to pass them coming out of the corner. There's not much they can do to defend that. So I think you're going to see this 49 car and the 07 Victor Williams try to pass coming out of either turn 2 or turn 4. But a little bit of separation now between the F5 Motorsports cars. as the 49 is right on the tail of the 20, trying to get that draft, and now peaking his car high, potentially. Nope, here he comes down low with a good shove from his teammate in the 07, Victor Williams. He is now at the leader's door, and we got a battle for the lead, Ken.
And there goes the 49 to the bottom. He will lead that lap number 59, with his fellow teammate right behind. I mentioned that they were inseparable ever since pretty much the beginning of this race, and they continue to stand true to that statement. Now 1-2 at the front of this field like they were a little bit earlier, right before that yellow that we saw right before the stage end at lap number 40, I think 47, as soon as that wreck happened. But we now see Eric Weiland, then no more help for Danny Maya to the outside, so he'll have to try and find an opening to the bottom. He's got help from Nicholas Weatherby in the 24, and I think now they're going to try to work to the bottom, stay single file for the moment, and Maya will have to try another way around to get those positions back, try to get back to this race lead. So single file all the way through, but if you look a little bit further behind Jack Durham, you'll see Rich Petrucco in the number 27. He is now at the head of this second pack. You see Joseph Lester, who was in that first group before that yellow. There's a couple of drivers that we haven't mentioned. Cameron Stone in this group as well in the 57. Watkins Glen winner. We haven't seen him so much through this race. We haven't really talked about him. He's kind of been hanging in the back of the field, not really making a statement early on, but I think he's one of those drivers, Andre, that when you mention drivers who want to flip the switch, maybe 10 to go, maybe later in this race, when everything starts to crunch down, he might be one of those drivers who try to just stick it out for the end, not really worrying about that first pack up front.
Right, and normally I'd be a little bit surprised to see Cam riding so far back this long into the race, but I think after last night's truck race, he maybe regrouped and kind of changed his strategy a little bit, went back to the drawing board, because last night he led a majority of the race and was constantly contending for the lead in that truck race, but was ultimately caught up in an accident about halfway through, and that ended his night. So maybe tonight he's just doing the opposite strategy. Okay, last night I led most of the race, I got involved in an incident, let's just take it easy tonight and try to let all the cards fall into place at the end of the race. So we'll just see, but the second pack is definitely the dicier of the two packs, as now we're going 2 by 2, the 53 trying to shove Cameron Stone to the lead here. Now, not so much in this stage, but as we approach the final stage, an interesting thing you're going to see play out is that a lot of these drivers won't want to lead whatever pack they're in, because when you lead the pack, you use more fuel, which means you have to pit more often, and potentially with a 60-lap final stage, it may be a two-stop, so they're going to have to save some fuel. Nobody's going to want to lead the packs at that point, but right now, we know they're going to have to pit once. There's no way they're going to make it to the end. There's no point in saving. So if you can lead your pack and get yourself out of harm's way, then go ahead and go for it. And that's exactly what the 27 car is doing. Rich Petrucco now leading the second pack with help from Joseph Lester, the pusher, as we've been calling him all night long, because he has been helping anybody who's wanted to shove. Unfortunately, so far not been up towards the front, but I think we'll see him up there eventually as the night goes on. And here comes Cameron Stone trying to challenge Petrucco.
And now you mentioned the drivers who need to go down pit road, most notably the end of stage 2, going all the way to stage 3, you have a 60-lap run all the way to the end of the race, because you have obviously the pit strategy here, which the drivers haven't approached yet. They haven't gone through the fuel window just at the moment, so they'll still be trying to just stay single file, try to do the most they can to stay within wherever they are, try to get comfortable for the most part. And since this main group is now, at least in the first pack, all the way down, they're going to be single file at the moment. They won't have to really be worried about drivers on the outside trying to go to the inside and maybe try to do something to go to the bottom so they can go down pit road. If they're all single file, they won't really have any issue going down pit road. They just slip down, start to get on the brake pedal, and then of course slow down to pit road speed, which we've seen a couple drivers already lock the brakes up with. But you mentioned the run all the way to the end of this race. You're looking at 60 laps. The drivers have to pit, and as soon as you're the driver up front, of course, you're going full throttle the entire way around. When you're in the draft, you have that ability to lay off the throttle a little more. You can go maybe 75%, maybe 80%. At sometimes maybe even 50% you can go at some points when you're behind the driver, because the draft that you have will not affect you so much, because you have the shove from behind, and then of course you have the draft from the drivers right in front of you, so you can lay off the throttle a little more, and in that process you can save a little more fuel. When you're all the way at the front of this group, however, you're all the way on the gas 100% because you're leading this entire group. You don't want to lay off the throttle, because as soon as you lay off the throttle, the drivers right behind you will start to gain, and then they will, they have the draft, so they will get the run, and that could possibly result in the checkup, which could if not, if it goes to the extreme, can result in a large pileup like we've seen early on through this race in a different scenario. So if you're that driver all the way up front, I think if you're the 49, you have to start thinking about pitch strategy. You have to start thinking about, maybe, am I wasting more fuel than the rest of these guys? Am I going to be equalized from the rest of this field? Will I have the same amount of laps left in my fuel tank to get all the way through? And if so, then you have to start to prepare around that, because maybe he wants to try and dip back, get the draft in, save a little fuel there, but maybe at the moment just trying to lead laps at the point. It's going to be an interesting conversation as soon as we get down, but it's just all dependent on the yellows, and we've seen a couple tonight, so that is definitely not out of the picture.
Right, and you know, the 49 is in a pretty comfortable position. He's got his teammate right behind him. They're communicating for sure, and I'm sure that the 07 isn't going to try and challenge for the lead, at least not yet. They're going to continue to work together and stay locked bumper to bumper. Two cars at the lead pack working together like that, it's a lot harder for anybody to get formed up and try to make that pass, because at that point, you know the second car in line is not going to jump out with you, so you have to overtake two cars instead of one, and sometimes just overtaking one car on that high side can be a challenge. So 49 definitely in a comfortable position right now, but as you said, as we continue on into the race and pit strategy becomes more of a important thing, maybe leading the pack won't be the best idea for him, but apparently the number 217 is having some connection issues. That's what we're hearing. So that could be disastrous for him. Daytona is not a track where you want to have internet issues, and it would appear he is back in the race, but a big blink like that is scary for everybody around him, because when that car disappears, you don't know if it's going to reappear inside of your car or right next to you, or what's going to happen. So a scary situation, but luckily nothing came of it.
Yeah, Durham in the tail end of that first group, so luckily if he's all the way at the back, even if he blinks, he could lose a little ground, but he won't be in too much of a disastrous situation, and he'll be able to, you know, it won't affect any of the drivers behind because there's nobody behind him. So even if he blinks and even if he has those network issues, you know, nobody else will kind of suffer right behind him. So he'll be all been so trying to get that figured out. Hopefully he gets it situated going through the rest of this race. But we got a couple drivers down in the infield care center. We've had some drivers in trouble, so we'll try to bring one of the drivers in while we're under this green flag stint. We'll start with the 37 of Jason Taylor, who was involved in that incident in that first group. We're going to bring him in. Jason, first of all, welcome to the 3xTV booth. You got a copy with us?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
All good in the booth, man. Hopefully, you know, you're okay after that incident. I know we saw what happened there with the first group. We were in that draft in the main pack with Cecil Green, the 07, most notably some of the other drivers a little bit in that group. Eric Wineland there as well. Just walk us through what happened through those laps all the way coming to the end of that stage.
So there was about, we crossed the line 46, and I was like, all right, no time better than the present to go try to get a stage victory here. Haven't been performing all season. I want to start doing good in races and get there. Kind of jumped out early. Eric didn't go with me. Fell back behind him, got a run. Eric jumped out, and I started pushing him in for one. And when we came on for two, it looked like the 07 drifted up and got Wineland and then me. And there we go, another early exit for the 37.
Well, certainly an early exit must make you think about what's going to happen from here on out, at least through the rest of the season. The next race is up ahead. Is there really any tracks or any places you're kind of looking forward to get a good run and, you know, try to stay up at the front of this field and, you know, prevent that early exit that happened tonight?
Yeah, I think my strong suit is the intermediate mile and a half. So we got Vegas, Texas, and I think a Kentucky or Kansas, one of those two in there somewhere. So, I mean, some good tracks for me to show out at, and hopefully not. Oh man, you know, just angry, upset.
It's definitely frustrating to get caught up in an incident, especially when you're towards the lead pack, because, you know, you don't really expect that. When you got the leader in your windshield and everybody around you has been so competent all night, you just don't expect to get caught up in an incident like that. So it's definitely frustrating, and we hate it for you, man, but you had a great run before that, so we're proud of you for that. And hopefully, like you said, your specialty is those intermediates coming up, and hopefully you can regroup, go back to the drawing board, and get the W.
All right, boys, thanks for the broadcast. We really appreciate it.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for your time. All right. Well, back to the race. I'm looking at the second pack here, Ken, and there is a lot of cars in this second pack, and they're all single file working together. they may be turning lap times equal to that of the lead pack, which is something you don't see very often. As whoa, Cody Bird sliding up nearly into Joseph Lester. That was a close call. Cody Bird, speaking of him, we got word before the race that he was having issues with his wheel, so he had to get out an old wheel, which is now ratchet strapped to his desk. So not a very stable setup, definitely something that's difficult to work through at a track like this where you have to be so stable on the wheel, but so far, he's made the best of it, still running up there in P14, right ahead of his teammate, Bryson Hixenbaugh, as they are heading into the backstretch, still trying to stay in the draft with the cars ahead. We're getting a little bit more separation in this second pack now. They were a little bit closer a few laps ago, but I think the separation could be by design. You know, a little bit more room to breathe, a little bit more comfort room is never something to complain about at these tracks. So as long as you don't fall out of the draft, there's nothing wrong with doing that.
And yeah, with this larger group, they might be just catching up to these guys up front, because you have, you know, obviously the main pack, you're seeing that all single file, but we're watching too wide with a couple of the drivers here. They were able to get back into this single file formation, and now they're just, I think their approach at the moment is just try to work together, stay single file, stay quick, and now, especially that the pit window is starting to come into play, now they're going to stay single file, of course going down pit road like I mentioned earlier, not having to deal with outside drivers on the outside lane and possibly creating something bigger than it should be. So what we're seeing, a lot of those drivers now going single file, working together, as we got drivers down pit road. Drivers in that first group, Cecil Green, Victor Williams, Brandon Pierce, Eric Wineland, and Danny Myatt going to be the drivers going down pit road, and kind of a 50-50 split. Wayne Grassi, Zach Probst, Jack Durham are drivers who did not go down pit road, who elected to stay out for these next couple laps. So separation between those two, but we got now the pit window coming into play.
I'll tell you what, the first pit sequence we saw, it was a lot of separation, a lot of one-car stops, two-car stops. You didn't see a massive pack peel off at once, but right there, we had upwards of 6 cars dive onto pit road at once, so maybe a little bit more organization. Perhaps these drivers are communicating because they want to have somebody to draft with immediately as soon as they get out of the pits. We mentioned that earlier. You don't want to exit the pits alone. You lose a lot of time if you can't get into the draft right away. So this is definitely an interesting pit sequence as now more cars peeling in. Looks like the 162 machine, as well as one of the Mountain Dew cars. I didn't quite catch which car that was. That may have been Delaney, as the lead pack that stayed out is now being led by Wayne Grassi as they make their way around one more time. But I can't imagine they can make it too much further on this fuel. They last pitted on lap 48, and we're on lap 74 now, so definitely going to have to come in sometime soon, but they're stretching it as far as they possibly can.
And that 7 has to start looking in his mirror right now, because he's got a huge pack right behind him. We'll see if they end up going down pit road or whether the 7 will be the solo driver there. He's hooked up with the 24 of Nicholas Weatherby, and actually he does go down pit road all by himself. So he will be the last driver, at least in that first group, to go down pit road. That'll allow the rest of this field that are now that decided not to go down pit road, so they will stay out an extra couple laps. Maybe they had a little bit saved more than the guys up front, so they'll try to get this for the most part as they can. Mabry will lead this field. We saw, I think I saw Brandon Pierce a little bit further back. He merged in with this group as well. He's fallen back ever since, and now trying to find his place in the draft. You see him now side by side, with one of the Sprite cars there, and Cody Bird, that's Hixenbaugh there in that mix. So he's going to try and find his way back in. Maybe hope that these guys pit a little bit sooner so he can get his lap back, be back in the cycle, and come back to the front where he was in that main pack. So all dependent now, but we've got a challenge for the high side, Andre, at least with the 2 drivers up top, and now 3 drivers up top. The 53 is going to join them. That's Preston McRae, Hixenbaugh, and Cameron Stone now working for the high side, possibly trying to go for the race lead in a matter of laps.
Gotta admit, I'm a little surprised by that, because right now with the pit sequence starting, we mentioned you don't want to be on the high side when it comes time to pit. You want to be on the bottom so you have that freedom to dive down whenever you want. But it looks like right now Cameron Stone and Bryson Hixenbaugh have just decided, hey, we're committed to trying to get up front on this high side. We're going to run these cars till they're pretty much dry on fuel, and we're going to see what happens. But Ken, we got another driver down by the infield care center. If you want to hop down there and go ahead and give him an interview, figure out what happened.
And we get to the 66 of Daniel Fields, and we'll bring him in. And Daniel, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy with us, first of all?
Yeah, yes, sir. What's going on, man?
All right, Daniel, trying to look at this race here, a very chaotic race here at Daytona, but not the best day for you in that 66 team. First of all, just tell us really what happened there with you and going through? I know there was a lot of chaos. I know there was a large wreck off of turn 2. Just kind of tell us what happened behind the wheel of your race car.
Large wreck hurt a little bit. I got out of it mostly okay. One fender was bad, very short amount of optional damage. Would have been okay. Pitted, got back out there, had a small group to run with towards the lead pack. Got my lead lap back in the next caution. And as we were getting the wave around, we went green. And Screw Up McGee there, Schilling, he decided to change his line right when we were passing him, and he just took us out.
Well, an unfortunate situation for you in the 66. I know things like this at Daytona. I know, as all of us as sim racers, it's very frustrating when something out of your control can take you out so quickly. But Daniel, now going into these next couple of races, you kind of have a now perspective through this. And is there really anything you're looking forward to? And now maybe just trying to figure out your way from Daytona all the way to Darlington in the next couple of races onto the end of the season to trying to finish your season now on a high note.
I'm looking forward to all the races, man. 98% of these guys are awesome. All the races are really competitive. Letcham do a great team. We've had really quick cars, with the exception of last week. So it's going to be terrific. I'm going to let this one go, go make a Bakken Grand, and hope next week's a little bit better.
All right, Daniel. Well, we're excited. We're excited to see you, of course, every week on here through the Galaxy Cup Series, and of course, we hope to see you from here on out through the rest of the season. And obviously, with your excitement through the rest of the races, we'll be excited to see you out there on track, putting on some laps and working with the guys around. So we wish you luck, especially going to the rest of these races. Unfortunate end to your night, but hopefully a better turnout at least through the rest couple of races.
Hey, thank you guys. You've been killing it. Keep up the good work. All right. Looking forward to the next broadcast.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Adios.
Daniel Fields out of the booth. He is early ending in this race, but hopefully very optimistic through the rest of this race. He said he's going to let this one go and try to go through the rest of these races. I think one of a great mindset, at least for a driver. I know it must be frustrating. We saw kind of the opposites between somebody who was frustrated. We saw the driver we just interviewed in the booth. He was very frustrated about what was going down and what happened with the race car, Jason Taylor. He was very frustrated, but then you go into Daniel Fields, who obviously tough break. It's always disappointing, but had a little bit of an optimistic outlook on what's going to happen to the rest of these races. So you see how different maybe some mindsets are at Daytona, because at this track you can't really predict anything happening out there.
Unfortunate break for the number 7 of Wayne Grassi. There was a massive checkup on the outside line, and he was the only other poor unfortunate soul on that outside line, and he's lost upwards of 7 positions before he was able to dive back down to the bottom. So now it's back to the drawing board, try to regroup and get some of that track position back. Right now it's Cameron Stone leading the pack right ahead of Bryson Hixenbaugh. Those two still have yet to pit. They are really stretching these cars as far as they possibly can. I did not expect anybody to make it this far. And I got to wonder if maybe it's because they were able to save a fair amount of fuel back in that second pack, just kind of riding around.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. And now that we're through this pit strategy, we've seen these guys stay out. So Cameron Stone on that outside lane with Hixenbaugh was able to get to the front of Mabry and Delaney and the guys a little bit further back. Preston McRae was on the outside as well. He's now slipped up to P number 5, so he's now in the group as well. And we've yet to see them pit, so maybe just a little bit of a different strategy we're seeing, maybe something they've got in control at the moment. And I think for the most part now you're going 18 laps until the stage end at lap 100. So is it key to stay out now? Is it kind of too late in the run? Is it too late now to go down pit road, or is it just your strategy right now possibly to go down pit road a little later, stay out a little longer than you probably expected? So Cameron Stone will continue to lead this field. It's single file pretty much all the way through until Weatherby all the way down there. He's right behind Cody Bird, and then there's a little smaller pack right behind. Not seeing too much 2-wide, 3-wide action because, of course, everyone's kind of worried about the pit strategy. We've already had some drivers dip down pit road and get their service, so we've already seen those drivers work through. There's one of the drivers who was the talk of the town, at least through the beginning of this race. That's Alex Princeton, the number 5. He's now back into this top 10, so always great to see him back and picking up after what happened through that caution. I think he went a lap down there on the pit strategy, so when the yellow came out, he was trapped a lap down, so he was able to get it back. Now up to this top 10 with the driver that we've seen been pushing the drivers on the top side, now going to help the number 5 all the way to the bottom. So there'll be single file. The 7 of Wayne Grassi will stoop up high, but he'll be the only one there, and we'll have the rest of this field try to get back through. And it's been a long night here at Daytona. We've only had 84 laps completed, but already we've seen so much happen, and it's already been a large sequence of events that we saw that crash in the beginning of this race. We saw what happened there as we got 2 drivers down pit road. There's the drivers I was just mentioning in that dynamic duo, the Princeton and Lester. Now down pit road, actually both of them overshoot. The 5 going to go into the grass. Gonna have to try and stop that race car and get back on the asphalt and get back to pit road. Not sure whether a penalty will be addressed there or what have you, but he's gonna try and get back to this as we'll see a replay. Looks like they both just locked up the brakes there. Yeah, they just locked up the brakes. You saw the 9 had a little bit of difference since he was a little bit closer to the wall. He was on the inside. He had a little bit more leeway, at least to not go in the grass. Here's an extra look. Here's a closer look, at least with the 5. You see him right above that white line going down pit road, and then it's into the grass, just trying to get that thing stopped, at least to go down at pit road speed. It's a very, very mere pit speed that you're seeing here at Daytona. Very, very slow as opposed to what you have when you're going 190 miles per hour here at Daytona. You're looking at so much, so difference of speed that when you go down pit road, you have to really stomp on the brakes and kind of rely on them and lean on them a little bit more so that you won't, kind of lock up the brakes like we just saw there. But meanwhile, we're still having Cameron Stone and Hixenbaugh continue to lead this field. Ford, Mustang, Chevrolet Camaro, lots of different colored schemes. We're seeing Cameron Stone in that Mountain Dew Ford Mustang that we see with Delaney and Jack Durham. They're all working Mountain Dew. And speaking of which, they're all down pit road. They're all going to stop and be hard on the brakes. And it looks like all of them will make it through. And everyone will go down pit road to get their service through. And we'll see how they shake out compared to the drivers who went down pit road earlier in this run. Guys like Danny Myatt, Eric Wineland, drivers like Cecil Green, Victor Williams. We'll see how they shake out since they're now plus 30 seconds away from these guys all the way down pit road. You're on board with the 49 of Cecil Green and now the 07 of Victor Williams. And speaking of those guys, the F5 Motorsport teammates, you talked about them already, and it's been kind of a show between those two. And of course they had Tanner Love last week. Tanner Love not showing up this week at Daytona, but we had those two working well together at Dover, and Tanner Love being at the front of this field. And we saw how much this really shaked up the rest of this field. It kind of showed out in their debut race. They kind of showed in. We really weren't sure what to expect from them, but they have been phenomenal ever since the drop of the green flag at Dover in their first race. And the 07 and the 49 continue to work together in their tandem. They will be the race leaders, but it's all dependent on how far these guys are back. Are they able to get back in this group? And if so, how long will it take before the larger group gets to the 49 and the 07 before we get to the end of stage number 2 at lap number 100?
Yeah, now Kenneth, it appears that Cecil and Victor had such a fine job pushing each other. They already have a 6.2 second lead, or a 6.4 second lead now over third place Cameron Stone, and it's just 2 cars, and this second pack is about, I want to say 6-7 cars. How long do you reckon it's going to take for this second pack to catch up and maybe overtake the top 2 drivers?
Well, we're looking at 2 wide right now. You see Zach Probst leading that group. They're on the outside of Hixenbaugh and Cameron Stone. So if they go 2 wide like this, if they continue to battle, it will take a little while longer for them to pick up to the drivers that are 1 and 2, Cecil Green and Victor Williams. But if you start to work together, you get into this larger pack, you start to work together a little more, then I'd reckon probably maybe 3 or maybe I'd say 4 to 7 laps until they start to pick up the pace and they start to gain on this field. But think about it now, just 6 seconds out from the race leaders right now. They are 6.147. Cameron Stone leading them all in this group, and then Victor Williams, you see the gap between them two, 6.3 seconds now. But as they're all single file, you'll see it start to dwindle a little more. Now 6.2, possibly 6.1, actually no, up to 6.4. So maybe actually staying even between these groups. Maybe it's not enough. Actually, it's starting to pick up a little more, so maybe just a little bit of a difference. Maybe the timing and scoring continues obviously to change lap by lap every time, and you see them now at the front of your screen. If you're looking at the 57 on board, you see those two just faintly, those 2 little dots going into turn 1. That's your race leaders. They're catching up very soon. We reckon they might get here in a couple laps time.
Yeah, that timing for ATVO is a little hit or miss, a little fluctuation going on. But that last time, they were faster than the first 2 drivers. Of course, the previous lap, we actually saw that Ciso and Victor were actually running faster lap times than that group of 8 or 7 or 8 cars. But that's because they were kind of battling side by side, as you mentioned. And while it's only 2 cars in the front, that second group battling side by side was slowing them down to the point where they were losing time. But now that they've single filed themselves out, they're starting to catch back up. Now, last lap it was like 5.5. Now they're at 4.6, and timing looks to kind of match that at almost about 0.7 of a second faster than the top 2 drivers now. In a couple more laps, I don't think it's going to be that quickly, but in a couple more laps they will catch up, and it's going to be a battle to see who's going to win stage number 2.
Cameron Stone, he saw those little 2 specks at the front of his windshield when he saw the 2 leaders. They're just 2 little dots. Now he's starting to see them form into actual cars, because now he's getting very close to the 2 race leaders. Now just 4.266 seconds off of these guys, and it continues to go down. So it just depends now. If they catch up quickly, and they're catching up as fast as they are at the moment, what will the 49 and the 07 do? Will the drivers in this long line, will they continue will they try to find their way around like they do maybe lap cars if they have the momentum? Will they try to follow right behind Victor Williams, maybe think of a different approach with now just 8 laps to go in this stage? Are they what will the 49 and the 07 do? Will they try to play defensive? Will they just try to let them by at the moment? Maybe think, hey, these guys are a little faster than us right now. We'll get back in this sooner or later. And you saw how they slingshotted up to the front of the field in that first group. If they do it once, if they do it twice, they can definitely put it off a 3rd time. And they probably are starting to think about this now that the back group there, as you see on board with the rear rear windshield of that 49, he's seeing that large pack now in his mirror. Well, obviously he sees the 07, but he's seeing those guys a little further back, probably getting more communications that they're starting to catch up. So 3.3 seconds now separates those guys. So now going to the end of the stage, it's less of the 49 and the 07 working together by themselves. It's now going to be a larger group catching up to these guys. Now Zach Probst is in this mix. Danny Myatt is back in here after falling back. Eric Wineland is also in this group as well. He mentioned he was one of the drivers involved in that incident in that first group with Jason Taylor and the Cecil Green in the 07. We saw him in that incident. He's already picked it back up, so he's now in this group, possibly with a chance to get a top 5 or top 10 in the stage. And Jack Durham, who we mentioned had internet issues, is now back in this. He continues to run comfortably in that pack, so now they will be closing in on 2.5 seconds with just 6 laps left to go in this stage until we get the caution at lap 100.
Internet issues on the track and internet issues in the booth. I apologize for that technical difficulty. Shout out to Carlos for jumping in right when everything crashed down for me right there. That was awesome of him. He did a great job. Appreciate it, buddy. Right now, those 2 lead cars are at a bit of a disadvantage. They don't have as many cars in the field like you had mentioned. This second pack with more cars is going to catch up to them. The question is, do they have time? We're on lap 95 as we cross the line, so they're going to have to make their way around 6 times total, and at this rate, I'm not sure that's going to be enough. Whoa, Cameron Stone way loose on the apron. Now up to the top of the track as the 63 has to check up quite a bit. That definitely hurt their chances of catching up, as now they have lost a lot of momentum. Big checkup for that second pack 10.
Yeah, luckily that 57 did not have the huge jump that sometimes if you make a mistake, you have the driver's freight training. Hicks and Baugh and the rest of them did a good job of slowing those cars down, at least to make room for that 57 to get back in line, lead this pack once more. Now more separation between the 63, excuse me, and the driver of the 162 right behind in that paint scheme right there in the Chevrolet Camaro. They're going to work their way around the 38 of Brandon Pierce, who is now a lap car, and that hurt their momentum a little bit. Obviously, they were catching up. They're now 1.2 seconds off the drivers in first and second, but now it's reminiscent with the 57 and the 63 what is happening with the 49 and the 07. Just a little tandem between 2 drivers working together with 2 different manufacturers. And now how long will it take now that those drivers a little bit further back that were in this larger group, now that they're trying to find themselves in the line and getting around that 38?
The gap closing massively as they make their way into 3 and 4. Now only about 7 car lengths between the first and second pack. and closing by a car length every few seconds. Right now, Cameron Stone leading the charge to get up to the leaders, F5 Motorsports, who've been so dominant all night long. And now, with a big jump to the outside, goes the 57 as well as Bryson Hixenbaugh. And they're going to carry that momentum right up to the door of the leader now, side by side. But can they maintain that momentum? Can they keep that track position up on the top line of the track? It's a tall order, but it looks like Cameron Stone's going to pull it off. And you mentioned those runs off the high side earlier, Ken, and right there it is in action, as right now, Cameron Stone is clear of the 49, and he is bringing his teammate in tow. Now going into the corner, they're going to probably dive low and try to make that block. They seem to be cleared. There they go, right down to the bottom. New race leader, Cameron Stone in that 57 Mountain Dew machine.
And Bryson Hixenbaugh will follow suit in a second with just 3 laps left to go into the end of stage 2. They miraculously made their way out of that pit cycle. They were one of the last drivers to pit in that group with Cameron Stone, Hixenbaugh, and the drivers behind. You see the 162 Probst and Danny Maya now starting to catch up. They'll probably try and work together to get back into single file, and they'll certainly catch up to the top 2. But those drivers just outside of Cecil Green and Victor Williams, obviously you pitted earlier, those drivers pitted a little bit later, and they have gained immensely since. They put that distance on the rest of the guys that were probably in contention to gain positions since they were down pit road, and they didn't really lose anything much. They only lost positions to that 49 and the 07, but they were able to pick it all the way back up. And now with the 49 and the 07 stuck to the high side, they're going to get the advantage now with just 2 laps to go in the stage.
Challenging on the high side, just like Cameron Stone and Bryson Hixenbaugh before, comes F5 Motorsports. Cecil Green now leading the charge on the outside, trying to mirror image what Cameron Stone did a lap before, but this time it looks like the 49 is going to stall that momentum out a little bit. And you know, Ken, I got to wonder, you mentioned that Cameron Stone and Bryson Hixenbaugh were some of the last cars to come down pit road. I initially thought the tires wouldn't mean too much at a track like this, but perhaps fresher tires makes passing on the outside a little bit easier when you have that grip and you have the car under you and you have that confidence that the car is going to stick. Because it seems like the 49 got that run initially, but once he got to the middle of the corner where you're turning the most, he started to sort of scrub those front tires and lose that momentum. So maybe tires are a factor here, Ken.
Of course, steering ratio also plays into a factor. Of course, tire wear also plays suit in the fact that you probably have a little more understeer, and that slows you down in turn. And like we saw in the corners, of course, trying to stay on the outside versus the drivers with the shortest way around the racetrack, it won't be too much to help you drive the drivers on the outside unless you have a lot of help up there. But that's a great point. You mentioned when the tires fall off, and if you have a steering ratio that's not very suited for drivers who have that, and we got a caution on the racetrack right at lap 100, and that is the stage. I actually forgot about that as soon as we were going through, so apologize for that. But we saw that going through. Cameron Stone will be the one and the leader on stage 2. So we have Danny Maya winner stage 1. We have a different stage winner this time around, Cameron Stone. And we'll try to talk to both of them now since we weren't able to have the time to talk to Danny Maya once the yellow came out on lap number 47. So we'll try to talk to him, get his opinions on winning stage number 1, and especially obviously through the rest of this race, now that he's in this group with Zach Probst and the rest of them. And of course, we'll talk to Cameron Stone, and we'll see whether these drivers go to actually no. I don't think we have anybody going down pit road, Andre. I think very interesting call if you go down pit road this time around, because these drivers went down pit road a little later. They probably won't have, you know, the worry, at least in their minds, to go down pit road right at this moment and be at the level playing field. And maybe it's just what they have in their minds and what they're communicating with their team. But obviously, appreciate Carlos for picking in from Andre. I know a little technical issues there, the internet issues. I know sometimes it's not very easy, so appreciate Carlos for picking in and, you know, trying to, you know, help out for the moment now that Andre is back and we've got him back in the booth. So we'll be good at least hopefully to the end of this race. So we've got this race now more than halfway through. We approached halfway at lap number 80, so we've already got this field halfway through. They've already know what they're expecting in this first half. We saw the cautions dwindle a little more. We saw those early cautions in that first stage or so, and then now in the second stage it seemed to be way calmer. But meanwhile, like I was mentioning, all the drivers going down pit road, it looks like they all will, and everyone will follow suit with Cameron Stone, and Bryson Hixenbaugh will lead them all down.
If I'm Cameron Stone, I'm thinking in my mind repeatedly, don't speed, don't speed, don't speed. I think Cameron Stone's got a penalty in pretty much each of the last 3 races, so hopefully he can keep it together and have a good sequence here. That's the hope that every driver has as they make their way down pit road. It's probably going to be 4 fresh Goodyears and fuel. There's no reason to take 2 tires at a track like this. unless you got some crazy strategy, which who knows? Knowing these guys, maybe they got something up their sleeve. And Hixenbaugh is going to shoot out of his pit stall way ahead of Cameron Stone. So potentially taking the race lead as he does cross the pit road exit line first. It is a new race leader in Bryson Hixenbaugh. What a stop for him. That is a crazy huge gap that he accrued right there. So right now you're seeing a few cars left on pit road, and again I think it comes back to just nobody wanting to be mid-pack. Everybody wants to be in the back, but again at some point they're gonna have to go around, because if they go a lap down, that's their race done. So a lot of interesting strategies play out. But Ken, how about we take our stage 1 winner up here and you can have a word with him.
Yeah, we're going to get a word with Danny Myatt in the number 20, who came out of stage number 1 a winner. So we're going to have to try to find him at least through the voice chats. I don't see him at the moment in any of the voice chats right now, at least with the communication. So we'll just try to follow suit with the winner of stage number 2, Cameron Stone. We'll bring him in and see his thoughts now winning stage 2 and going through the rest of this race. So Cameron, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. First of all, you got a copy with us?
Yes, sir.
All right, Cameron, you're a winner in stage number 2. You were working with Hixenbaugh, who's now in front of you, Zach Probst, Danny Myatt, those guys behind you in that larger group. Just tell us what went through the pit strategy. I know you guys pitted a little later than some of the guys up front. I know the 49 and the 07 got the head of you at the end, but you guys were able to pass, obviously, to get that stage win. Just tell us what was going down in the strategy, especially in that larger group going single file.
Yeah, those the F5 boys, they decided to short pit it. Me and Bryson had kind of the same idea, but they beat us to the punch there, and I think they got a little bit of damage from the earlier accident, so we were able to get around them, and they tried to get back by, but they couldn't do it. So strategy now, we got about half the field either with damage or not on the track anymore, so it's a little bit safer to be up here at the front. So we're just gonna try to hold it at the front all stage 3 and come home with a checkered flag.
And speaking about the checkered flag, you're now going into the final stage of this race, so you won't have any stage yellows to go into effect. Obviously, the yellows on the racetrack will take into effect, and obviously it's still unknown whether that will happen. But as far as your strategy goes, and as far as what you're thinking about going into this, the rest of this race, is there any worries? Is there kind of anything you're thinking about in your mind that's more notable than the rest of the other thoughts, kind of thinking what's going to go down from here on out to the checkered flag, and what you're going to do to try and stay up front and get a win?
Well, we obviously have a plan in place, but if a caution comes out, it'll change it. So I mean, if it goes green, then hopefully everything goes according to plan. Entering pit road under green and whatnot. But you never know. On super speedways, caution could come out at any time. So just got to be ready to think on your toes.
All right, Cameron, we're gonna let you
Cam. Sorry about that, Ken. Thank you for your time, Ken. Good luck in the race.
Yeah, man.
We're going to get to the green flag here with Hixenbaugh and Cameron Stone, who we just talked to, will lead this field to the green flag. And Zach Probst and Jack Durham, who got positions off that pit stop, will now follow suit in 4th. Green flag back out. We conclude stage 2. We begin the final stage, the end of this race. We'll see what exactly happens and how far that strategy will play out, like the 57 mentioned. And we'll see as they go side by side, trying to get their lines in early on. That 57 has the edge with that little line on the inside. We'll start to get to him soon.
Potentially a little bit of team strategy. I think that's the first time we've seen the outside line get the jump all night long. So perhaps Bryson Hixenbaugh is thinking about letting his teammate get up front so that he can push him. A lot of times when you're working together, you kind of dictate, okay, I'm going to be the pusher. I'm a better pusher than I am a leader. And you kind of figure out what everybody's comfortable with, and it seems like maybe Bryson's just more comfortable being the pusher. So he kind of let the 57 drop in line in front of him, and now they have control of the field, and they're just going to have to do what they can to hold on to it. A little bit squirrely through the trial and right up against the bumper. It's a bit of a risky move to get that close. It's very easy to turn somebody when you bump them just right or just wrong, however you want to put it. But they are working together fantastically as they are putting a little bit of distance to the cars behind. The 162 is the next car behind them in 3rd place. That is Zach Probst. He's got a little bit of damage to his front end. And now a bunch of cars jump out of line right next to Zach Probst, and they are now making the charge. That's John Delaney in the 6 on his outside, followed by the, Jack Durham on the bottom now, diving down, and Cam Caldwell in the 12 is up top. So a little bit squirrely out of the corner, near contact, but they gathered it up. a lot of action early on in this stage. Everybody trying to fight their way to the top.
And some of the drivers on the outside using the outside to gain the momentum momentarily and then try to find an opening down the bottom. We saw the 53 of Preston McRae do just that. He was a little bit further back and then went to the outside with the guys up top, with Cam Caldwell, with the F5 Motorsports guys, with Rich Petrucco and Eric Wineland up there. Was able to gain ground and found an opening right behind the 217 of Durham. So now he's gained a couple of spots, but that outside lane continues to contend as now the rest of the field will try and catch up to the dynamic duo up front of Stone and Hicksonball. They will start to get the run and the draft. You see how much the gap is closing between those two. The 49 and the 07 will continue to try and lead this outside line. And Andre, I think now that you're in this final stage of the race, especially as we get the pit cycle underway, or at least when drivers are good to go on fuel, those drivers will now start to go up to the high side, and we'll see an outside line start to form and drivers contending a little more, being more aggressive. And drivers like Cameron Caldwell, who we haven't seen much of this race, is now up to this main group. So lots of positions being shaken up here late in this race.
Yeah, you do have those drivers who are going to wait till towards the end to really turn on that aggression and start to try to form up on that high line. But I'll tell you, Team F5 Motorsports, Cecil Green and Victor Williams, they have been dedicated to the high side all night long. If they're not in the lead, they're on the high side, and they seem to make it work. I mean, they have made an insane number of passes, even when they don't have that much draft help. So they are a force when they get locked up, and it doesn't seem to matter what lane they choose. And I think the other drivers know that. You know, you got this team that's been up top pretty much all night long, making passes, making it work. So you got drivers like the number 27 of Rich Petrucco. He notices that. He knows how good they are on the high side, and now he's come up to the top line to follow them and hopefully throw a lasso to the tow hitch of the car in front and let them pull him right up to the front. But unfortunately, a little bit of a checkup for the 27. Not sure what happened there, but still, F5 Motorsports maintaining their speed, even making some passes on that high line with very minimal draft help. Very impressive.
And I mentioned that if they're able to do that slingshot move once or twice, they'll definitely be able to, be capable to do it a third time, since they've been so good working together on that top side. And pretty much through the majority of this race, they've been right locked with each other's bumpers, and they really haven't thought about separating or going to the inside. They've just stuck about thinking together, and they thought about sticking together, at least I should say. I got that switched up, but they thought about sticking together, and they continue to do so efficiently, and they've done a swell job of staying up within this main group. And they don't really have as much help to the high side. I saw Rich Petrucco and Wineland kind of peek up there, but they fell back a little bit. They've lost a little bit of ground, so not much help there. They'll probably try to stack up once more as Wineland dips down below Wayne, right to the backside of the 7 of Wayne Grassy, as now everyone still continues to be single file. Cameron Stone will lead this field to lap number 109 all the way to lap 160. Just about 50 laps remaining in this race. So we got the top 5 all within a little blanket before you get to Jack Durham in the 217. Will now start to pick up, and that outside line gaining a little bit more patrons, but it's not really working, at least in the short term.
Right. They don't have enough cars right now, definitely. I mean, the bottom lane, I'm looking at a good 8 cars, and that's just what I'm looking at. There's more behind them. And the top line only has 3-4 cars at a time. Sometimes another guy's going to jump up there. They'll have 5, but it's just not quite enough. You mentioned earlier the bottom line is the shortest way around the track, and no matter how good your setup is, that's kind of a hard fact to get around. So it almost looks like the 49 is going to now duck low, potentially, but I don't know. I think right now the best strategy for the 49 and the 07 F5 Motorsports is just to be patient. We got 50 laps left in the race. That's plenty of time, especially when you're that close to the front. Plenty of race ahead of you to try and make something happen, wait for some people to wreck out or make mistakes to capitalize on. And it seems like Victor Williams wants to run the bottom, but the 49 is staying up top. So maybe a little bit of miscommunication between the team there, because they are not quite linked up like they were before, as now the 07 comes back to the top. Maybe some overheating. Maybe the 07 just got a little hot following his teammate and had to duck out of line. That does happen. These radiators get real warm if you stay too close to somebody too long. So now a more distinct 2 packs forming as the 49 drops back a little bit, and we're kind of seeing this 2-pack system we've seen all race long, Ken.
And that's something we really didn't mention through the most of this race is the radiators and how hot they can get and how hot the temperatures can get in that car to the point where it can blow the engine up, and that could easily signal the end of your night here at Daytona. And at plate tracks like this, you kind of have to watch your temps a little more than you would at other tracks, because since you're so close behind drivers most of the time, you're usually in the draft, you're right along to a driver's back bumper, you're giving them the push, and you're staying there for the most part. You know, you have to try and give that room for a little bit of fresh air to get into that engine, or else it could overheat and then blow up. And obviously, if you're in the middle of this pack, guys like Hicksenball, you know, guys like Delaney, guys in those lines right there, if you blow an engine, you lose ground, and that checks up everyone right behind you. And usually that has been the cause of yellows a lot of times here at super speedways, where drivers can blow their engines. And since they're so close to the driver right behind them, no real time for any of the drivers to make any maneuvers to get around that car, so then they get into the back of them, and then of course other drivers might collect there as well. But luckily none of that has really happened so far in this race. We haven't seen any drivers struggle with that too often, and thank goodness, because a lot of drivers can easily get taken out through that way, and I know that's a very frustrating way and a disappointing way to exit your race by having that engine blow up at the wrong time, especially when you're trying to give the push and trying to help like the 07 has been doing this entire race with that 49. Now Rich Petrucco has been one of the only drivers to really help up top. Eric Wineland has been a little more indecisive. He's thought about the bottom, he's thought about the top, he's thought about a couple of different lines to choose. Now Petrucco is going to follow suit to the bottom, so it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars on the inside line, with Petrucco now making it 3 up top. 49 and 07, I think that their mindset is kind of just to hang on for the most part.
Right, I think they're dedicated to that high side. Like I said, it doesn't seem to matter who's going with them or who's not. They are liking that high side. They seem to be comfortable up there. And the more they run up there, the more comfortable the other guys are going to get with jumping out with them, because they know these guys aren't going to duck down and leave me out to dry. They're going to stay up there, and they're committed. So, again, it's just like what Joseph Lester was doing earlier in the race, putting karma in the bank, making these other drivers aware that, hey, if you jump up with us, we're going to stay here. We're not going to abandon you. We're not going to hang you up to dry. I've noticed the 07 seems to be fighting loose. That's the second time his car is shot left coming out of the corner, nearly making contact. The last time it was one of the Mountain Dew machines. This time it was Wayne Grassy and Eric Wineland. But if he's fighting loose, that might be because of that damage. You can see his right rear spoiler is bent in just a little bit, and that is enough to make you extremely loose. I know it doesn't look like much, but it can affect the handling of your car big time. Same for the 49. He's got a lot of rear end damage, but his damage seems to be a little bit more symmetrical. So as dumb as it sounds, that's actually a little bit better than just having damage on one side. So a little bit of adversity for the team to try to work through the damage they acquired early on in that incident that they were caught up in, unfortunately, but they are making up some ground. The 49 is now challenging for 4th place on the high side, now up to the right rear quarter panel of John Delaney. That would be for P3 if they could get ahead of him, but whoa! There goes the 07 way loose!
The 07 loose, like you just mentioned, and he is around into the turn right there, got into the 27 Rich Petrucco, and on the racetrack, that'll definitely cause a yellow with just 45 laps remaining in this race. Everybody else scrambling to get around on the outside, and like you mentioned, just fighting loose on that race car. I think this time though it was just a kind of a push there from the 27, might have unsettled that car, and the 07 tries to hang it and keep it alive, and then hits the outside wall, gets into the 27. I saw the 7 to Wayne Grassy also involved in this as well. This was coming into turn number 3. They were on the outside, and then right there unsettles the 07, and he tries to hang on, and then the 27, they both get together, and then that goes down into the 7 to Wayne Grassy. The 31, kind of an awkward spot, hoping that the 07 wasn't going to hit him down there. But now this changes everything, because remember we were talking about how comfortable the 07 and the 49 were. Now if you're the 49, your teammate is done. Your teammate is out of this, or at least your teammate is, you know, going to have heavy damage, and he's not going to be really contending in the draft. So if you're the 49, you're all by yourself, at least now, and you're gonna have to just try to find another way out, because he's been working with him this entire race, and now that he's gone, it's gonna change a lot.
Definitely. They had a great team dynamic all night long, and they were working together on that high side, as we saw, for so long. And now the 49, Cecil Green, he's on his own. His teammate is done. I doubt they're going to be able to get that thing back on the track, and like you said, even if they do, it's not going to be competitive. They're not going to be able to work together like they were. So now Cecil Green's probably looking around saying, okay, who's near me? Who do I work well with? Who do I maybe know? Maybe I've been talking to some of these guys outside of racing. Maybe they'll be willing to work with me. Or perhaps he's getting on the mic and saying, hey, let's make something happen. But he's got to make something happen and find somebody to work with, because you can't run that outside by yourself. That's just not going to work. So we got a few pit road takers. Actually, and by a few, I mean a lot, which kind of surprises me. We're on lap 117. They probably just pitted right around lap 100 or give or take. And now they're coming down again just this little while later. So perhaps thinking that they can now turn this into one more stop, or potentially save fuel and stretch it to the end, whatever kind of strategies they have. But Bryson Hixenbaugh has overshot his pit stall, as has the 27 of Rich Petrucco. Disastrous for those two drivers. Everybody else seeming to sort of file out. But man, a lot of time lost for Bryson Hixenbaugh with that, sliding through his stall.
2 spots lost for Cameron Stone and Hixenbaugh. They'll fall to the clutches of the 162 of Zach Probst, who got out first, and the 6 of Jonathan Delaney. So those two were able to get out first. Those will be the 2 that will lead your field to the green flag with just less than 40 laps to go, just a little bit over 40 laps to go in this race. And Hixenbaugh, Cameron Stone will fall to 3rd and 4th in that line of the drivers that just went out pit road. So lots of time lost there, and any mistake down pit road, like you mentioned, with Hixenbaugh overshooting his pit stall just a little bit too much. That costs you time. Definitely, that loses you a couple of tenths that could be the gain of a couple of tenths for some other drivers further back, or some drivers maybe 1 or 2 positions behind you. And we already saw how that shake up. So now Delaney will be 2nd. Zach Probst will lead this field to the green flag. We've got the 1 green signal with just 42 laps remaining in this race. There is the 7 of Wayne Grassley, who got the damage from that last incident. He now is out of pit road, trying to get that damage fixed as most as he can. But what I'm curious to see now is, we've been talking about the 49 of Cecil Green, as you look at a beautiful overhead shot of Daytona International Speedway and its landscape. Always just a beautiful venue to be here every time you visit. And you see the airport right alongside, right behind the racetrack. Sometimes a little bit of a picturesque setting. You see the plane landing as soon as they were going down the back straightaway off of turn number 2. Always great to see. But what I was talking about, Cecil Green, now that we mentioned that he's now the solo F5 Motorsport driver here, he is now further back. I don't see him in these first couple of rows. There he is, a little further back, right next to Brian Mabry behind him. So he's the solo driver. If you're the 49 right now, you're thinking about drivers who maybe want to help you. Is there maybe you're kind of holding out hope that maybe those drivers who are sticking out to the high side through portions of this race, maybe they will try to stick with him and probably form some sort of teammateship or some sort of companionship between those two? Well, I think Andre might be having.
I
Andre,
apologize for that. Bit of an issue there. I lagged a bit. But we're about to take the green flag coming out of turn 4. We got the 162. That is Zach Probst leading the field. This is the first time all night, since a pit sequence at least, that he's going to lead the race. The first time on a restart for sure. And this could be good for him. He's had a lot of speed. He's ran up front for pretty much the entirety of this stage. And now, as they take the green flag, he's going to get a good jump on the inside of John Delaney. And if he can get clear of him, that's going to give him clear track to lead the race for the first time in a while, and that could be great. But man, that outside, what a jump they got. John Delaney getting clear of Zach Probst. And now the question is, does John Delaney stay up high and try to stick with Bryson Hixenbaugh and Danny Myatt, or does he dip down? It looks like he's committed to the top. He's going to let that top lane go. The 162 lifting, he has conceded the position. He saw that high line coming, and now everybody diving low. Danny Myatt in that 20 machine diving low. Dave Fugue, haven't seen much of him yet all race long. He's diving low. But right now, the race leader, John Delaney in that Mountain Dew machine, and he is going to lead a lap, and hopefully, at least for him, it's hopefully he's going to lead the rest of the race. But a lot of challenge from behind. Bryson Hixenbaugh obviously anxious to get to the front, although Bryson might also be waiting for his teammate. Maybe he doesn't want to make any crazy moves until Cameron Stone can find his way back up there. We'll just have to wait and see, Ken.
Interesting development that we saw 4 cars dip down to the inside lane as opposed to maybe the usual 1 or 2 that we see when the outside gets the run. But now that we're in this final stint of the race, these drivers are good on fuel pretty much almost to the end, I think. So Now we're seeing a little more aggressive moves being played out. Cameron Caldwell, Dave Fugue now to the high side. They're going to try to work together, and like we were talking about, Cecil Green still holding out hope right there. He is in front of Eric Wineland there, so they're going to try and develop something on the high side. Not much help, though. The 49 doesn't really have the support as much as it would. So we're still looking to this inside line, and we got contact between Cameron Stone and Dave Fugue. The 57 is around on the bottom of the racetrack. I think he was able to keep it straight, and no yellow. He doesn't go back up the racetrack, so no yellow. So we stay green. Tough break for Cameron Stone. He's got damage from that incident as well. We'll take a replay. This was with the 04 coming into turn number 1. They get into contact there, and the 57 goes for a wild ride. Had to do a rallycross jump there going into turn number 1. Luckily was able to back it down and prevent the car from going back up the racetrack, possibly causing something bigger. But you see a more of an aerial shot here. Here's the contact. Then the 04 maybe just trying to, actually the 57, I think they might have tried to, I think the 04 kind of went down at the same time that the 57 was kind of sliding up just a little bit. So they met at the wrong place, and they made contact with 57. Obviously the short end of the stick on that one. The 04 continuing to troop on, now behind Zach Probst. But we saw a couple of drivers hanging out top. Now the 49 will try to do so all by himself, but he's got no help. Now he did not find that opening there, so he's going to be on the outside of the 04 as Delaney and Hicksonbaugh continue to lead this field, and Danny Meyer following suit in third.
Bryson Hicksonbaugh now also without a teammate. So we had two teams that were distinctly working together and really doing a great job of it. And now both of those teams have lost one member each. So we got two solo flyers who probably don't want to be solo. And the question is now, does Bryson Hicksonbaugh just link up with the 6 car here, John Delaney, and try to work with him, or does he try to get to the lead? Because at this point, your teammate's out of the race effectively. He's still on the track, but his car is heavily damaged. You know he's not going to be a contender. So do you just try to get up there and take it for yourself, or maybe you wait a little bit and you be a little bit more patient? We are on lap 124, so we've got 37 laps to go. That's a decent amount of racing here at Daytona. It is a 2.5 mile track just about, so it depends. Is he going to be patient? Is he going to try to take it? If he does try to take it, how defensive does John Delaney make it? Because I know Delaney is a very aggressive driver, and that aggression sometimes carries over to playing defense. If somebody tries to get around him and wants to make the pass, he makes them work for it. So definitely it's going to be a show to see who gives and who tries to take it up front.
And the question also arises with the 63 of Hicksonbaugh is that if he goes up top and tries to make a move with Delaney, who's going to follow? Who's going to try and help him to gain the spot over Delaney and take control of this race lead? Who else is going to follow to the outside? Who's going to make that move? Who's going to take that risk to go up top and possibly be in danger of losing spots and falling out of this main group and possibly going all the way to the end of the train? He probably has in mind, though, Hicksonbaugh, that there are some drivers in this group that are willing to go up high. Obviously, Cecil Green, one of those drivers. Eric Wineland has been a little on the ropes. He's been up top a handful of times, but he's also chosen the bottom side in terms of some circumstances. So it's always been a pick and choose battle with that 31. He's been kind of picking both lanes instead of just picking one all the way through this race. But if Hicksonbaugh has that, if he tries to make an outside move, there probably won't be much there. We haven't seen Danny Meyer really attack to the high side trying to follow somebody. Zach Probst really hasn't done much of that either. Dave Fugue, he was on the outside, but just all by himself. He really didn't have much help either. And a lot of these drivers further back have not really tried to venture up there. So Hicksonbaugh now in a little bit of a battle in terms of whether he will go high. Maybe he'll just try to stick low. Maybe just hang with Delaney for the most part. Try to be with Denny Mine and try to be with Zach Probst. Now Dave Fugue is kind of letting these guys go on the high side. Not sure if there's an issue with the 04, maybe some network issues, but he's falling back through this train.
Yeah, the 04 we mentioned at the start of this race, he's had some internet issues the last few weeks. Unfortunately, that pattern is not going to end anytime soon as he continues to have network issues, as 3 wide with the 49, still 3 wide as they make their way down their backstretch, now sorting out the 2 wide. That was a scary situation. Going back to the lead pack, I gotta say, I don't think the 63 is going to try to make any moves up top. I've been watching them race with the onboard camera for myself here, and a few times the 63 has pushed Delaney hard enough to lift his rear end suspension pretty much off the ground. So a lot of faith in Delaney that he's going to be able to keep that car under control when you receive those pushes. So I think he's just trying to work together and stay on the bottom and keep himself up front until the end of the race, which is when he's probably going to strike. But right now, a lot of patience from that 63 machine. Danny Myatt a little bit further back. He's not right on the bumper of the 63, but perhaps he's trying to fall just far back enough to get a bit of a run with that draft and try something on the high side. The question is, like you mentioned, when you make that move, it's always a risk because who's going to come with you? Who is going to stay up there? And right now, a lot of these drivers that are in this pack haven't really shown that they're committed to the top line. You mentioned Eric Wineland has been on the ropes with it all night long, going high, going low, wherever the opportunity seemed to be presenting itself, whichever line was fastest. But he was never fully committed to one or the other. And I think a lot of these drivers have noticed that. So if Eric Wineland goes to the top, they're thinking, well, he might just dip back down. So I think it's going to be hard for these guys to really form something on the high line unless you see a lot of cars jump out at once and they got a lot of faith in one another. But we're on board right now with the 162 behind Danny Myatt. 162, of course, piloted by Zach Probst. And this onboard camera, I love it because it really shows you how difficult it is to see at these tracks. It's something that you never really mention, you never really think about. But these cars are so tall and you sit so low that when you're pushing somebody, when you're behind them, you basically can't see anything but their bumper. You're driving based on their movements. When you see their car start to turn, you start to turn. When you see their car start to slow down, you start to slow down. And so it's definitely a game of reaction and critical thinking as opposed to observing your surroundings. As now Delaney is going up high, and okay, so now we're on the helmet cam of the 162, so you guys can see exactly how hard it is to see. I mean, all you can see right there is the bumper of the car ahead in that yellow line. Some drivers prefer to use that yellow line as their guiding factor to try and keep themselves in line. Some drivers look at the car ahead, but either way, it's a challenge, man.
We saw Delaney dip up to the high side, so it's not a factor of whether Bryson Ixavan can make a move to the top, because obviously that's out of the question and that's out of the window now that Delaney has fallen back. Not sure whether there was just an issue there with the 9 or maybe something happened, maybe he got out of line and maybe the 63 just took that little gap there, and then the 9 had no choice but to just dip up outside to not make any contact, of the 6 car, to go up to the high side, and not really much choice and not really much space, and didn't want to obviously make contact, so probably just sweeping all the way to the high side. And there's Cameron Stone, who was involved in that incident. He is now a couple laps down due to that. He's now 1 lap down due to the incident there. He had to get some damage fixed, so he's now just trying to stake around this racetrack, probably hoping for a yellow so he can get a lucky dog, get back on this lead lap, and try to contend for the race win once more, as the top 3 have now separated themselves by just a couple of car lengths to Eric Wineland down in 4th. And there's Cam Caldwell taking a peek down low, maybe getting some fresh air, also trying to see what those leaders are and where they are in relative to his car. So they're going to be all together. 1, 2, 3, 63, 20, 162. All Chevrolet Camaros working together. And Hicksenbaugh now in control of this field. And you mentioned without a teammate now, he's all solo.
Absolutely. You know, I'm looking at the lap counter, and I think I have a theory as to why Delaney dropped out of line. We mentioned earlier in the race that in this final stage, fuel's going to be more of a question. So perhaps Delaney felt like he was just burning up too much fuel leading this pack. He didn't want to do it anymore. He felt like he needed to conserve and save, so he dropped out of line. Now he's behind some other guys, and he can let them pull him around the track as he's going 3/4 throttle or so, saving that fuel. And now it's Bryson Hicksenbaugh that's leading the pack, and it's his responsibility to keep his pedal to the metal and keep going 100% on that throttle, and that's going to burn up fuel. So if fuel is a question, if these guys are close at all to making it through that, you definitely don't want to be the lead car. So that could be what was running through Delaney's mind. I definitely don't see much aggression either out of Danny Myatt or the 162 with Zach Probst. They've been riding behind Bryson Hicksenbaugh, and again, it could be a matter of let him pull you around the track, conserve some fuel. There's no reason to lead right now, especially with 28 laps left. You can't win it until the last lap, so maybe just ride around for now, Ken.
It's all dependent on what's going to happen, but we got 28 laps to go, approaching 27 remaining, and I kept thinking about this, exceptionally the pit window, at least for the moment. We saw them pit with just over 40 laps remaining when that caution came out, and now that's passed us in a rearview mirror. Now we're just in a little bit deeper into this run. I've been kind of confused to see whether maybe the pit strategy or maybe the fuel window is just at least a little bit too much to the end of this race. I'm not sure whether they'll go down pit road or whether they're all good on fuel from here on out, or whether maybe some drivers are saving a little bit. Maybe some drivers are sticking a little back, trying to save a little more. Not sure whether what's going to happen on that fuel situation, but nonetheless, we've got the top 3 still with separation. We didn't really see this much in terms of the one, like first, second, third. We're seeing separation a lot between those two. Wineland, there's a big gap between him and Probst, and then all the way back to Cam Caldwell. I don't know whether these drivers are just kind of sticking back. Maybe they're saving a little more, but the separation is there. I'm not seeing a lot of drivers pinned to the back bumpers as much as we saw early in this race. So maybe tied on fuel, maybe something that they're kind of keeping up for the rest of this race to try and save until the end.
Right, you mentioned they pitted with about 40 laps to go, and I gotta say, that sounds pretty close to a fuel run. I think the trucks are capable of going about 33 laps, and the Cup cars have a slightly larger fuel cell, so I think some of these guys might be close, and we might see some guys run out or try to save and make it to the end. Some of the guys might feel like they can't make it, they'll duck in and pit. But you mentioned that separation between the top 3, and you're absolutely right. The 162 at one point had dropped to about 5 car lengths back from Danny Myatt. And again, that could just be him letting off the throttle, riding around about half throttle, conserving that fuel. And then once he falls back enough, he just gets back on the throttle, 75% or so, gets back up to his bumper, and then repeats it. And that's going to save you some fuel. But again, Bryson Hixenbaugh is not saving anything up front. He is running full throttle, 100%. He's got the wind right in the front of his car, nothing to help him conserve. So either he's very confident that he's going to be able to make it to the end, or he's very confident that nobody can make it to the end. Either way, he does not appear to be trying to save.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really save when you're all the way at the front. You're all full throttle, and you don't really have much opportunity to slow a little bit down and, you know, maybe put the clutch in, or maybe just kind of lay off the throttle a little bit in terms of that, because you can't really lay off because they're all right to your back bumper. So any little slowdown will check them up, and that probably won't be the best situation for Myatt or the 162. It'll probably get them a little frustrated if they're getting checked up like that. But 63, I think right now, you said it, if he's probably confident that he can make it on fuel, and possibly that everything will be good all the way to the end, or possibly he'd be confident that nobody can make it and he won't be alone in this situation. And the fact that if he can pit, if he pits, everyone else will follow and pit as well. It won't just be him pitting by himself and everyone will just continue on to the race end. It'll mostly, if nobody else can make it, it'll be him and the rest of the field with him. So if he pits, the only position she'll lose will be with those guys, and it won't be, you know, at least it'll be more of a fight, considering that they'll be all down pit road. But again, we've seen it with groups where maybe some people will split 50-50 on which drivers go down pit road and which ones don't. We saw it in that first group, Andre, a little bit earlier in this race. We saw maybe three drivers go down pit road in one group, and maybe 3 or 4 drivers stay out, and those drivers went out a little extra laps, and they also went down pit road a little later. So maybe it's not always comfortable when those drivers will pit, because maybe some drivers will take the pit road early. Maybe they want to get that over with quickly, or maybe those drivers will stick it out until a little bit further in the run where they'll have to go down pit road. And we saw how much the distance separated can really take into effect. Now it's a 2-second gap between Zach Probst in the 162 and Eric Wineland in the 31. So I think saving is definitely in the books for a lot of these drivers at the moment.
Definitely. I think that's why we're seeing this massive separation. Everybody's trying to conserve everything they can. A lot of lap traffic right now as Bryson Hixenbaugh is making his way around the 3 car. The 3 car, of course, made that incredible save earlier tonight. Brian Mabry avoiding the wreck early on, diving down almost all the way to the road course chicane to do it, but an incredible drive by him. Unfortunately, now he's fallen out of the draft and he has gone another lap down there. So tough break for him, but right now, again, the leader's making another pass on a lap car. This time it is Cecil Green. It seems like without his teammate, he wasn't able to get anybody to work with him, and he is just dropping back. He was obviously close to getting lapped these last few laps, I noticed on the timing and scoring, and now he has gone down another lap. So just a tough break for Cecil. It seemed like his strategy was really dependent on having that teammate to work with him, and now that's all been thrown out the window, whereas Bryson Hixenbaugh has adapted. No teammate, no problem. He's still out here leading the race, Ken.
Yeah, Cecil Green, after he lost the 07 and his teammates are working so well together, he did not really find a way out of it. He was not really able to hook up with any other driver and make some moves to the outside. Nobody really wanted to go with him. He really didn't have the run, and now the fact that he's now 2 laps down is now 1 lap down actually is not great for that 49. He would just have to try and find a way around these leaders, at least through a yellow flag. Maybe get the lucky dog, because he is 14th right now, currently 1 lap down. He is in the lucky dog spot. So if a caution comes out at the moment, the 49 can get that lucky dog position, and he'll be able to get back on the lead lap and maybe have a second effort at going for this race win, maybe trying some other drivers to work with. But speaking of which, as the field is now working through with just 20 laps to go, and we already did not get it from halfway, we're going to try to get through the rest of the field, and we'll actually start with the 20. I was anticipating to start with the 63, but he's falling back now to the outside. So Danny Myatt, currently your race leader, winner in stage number 1, had it right after the caution came out, and ever since then he's been in this main group pretty much for the most of this race. In the second half, he's picked it up mostly throughout the stage number 1 all the way through now with just 19 laps to go. So Danny Myatt doing a great job staying out front. He's done a good job of keeping his position and keeping that race car clean. He's one of the cleaner race cars on the track, Andre.
And if you look to your right, you'll see the number 63, piloted by Bryson Hixenbaugh, making a charge back towards the lead. He stayed in the back early on, trying to stay out of trouble. It was only about halfway through the race that he finally started making a charge to the front with his teammate, and now he's been running up front for this entire stage, reclaiming the lead from second just now.
And then right behind is the 162 of Zach Probst. You see a little bit of a crinkle down there on the right front as Danny Myatt goes down pit road. And now the 162 will go down pit road. So as we were going through the field, the pit strategy and the pit cycle are starting with just 19 laps to go. Hixenbaugh will be in command of this field. He's going to help Cecil Green now, who has just unlapped himself. So now everyone will go down pit road and the cycle will continue. And there, as I was just mentioning with the 162, he's been keeping himself relatively clean. He got a little bit of damage there, but nonetheless, he has been sticking with the first group as well as Danny Myatt. Those two have been consistent, both of them together in that first pack, and they really haven't let up either.
And before they dove off of pit road, it was Eric Wineland in the 31 behind them. He is currently up to P2 with this pit sequence. He's been strong all night. Again, he's been kind of indecisive in what lines he wants to be dedicated to, but regardless, he's managed to keep himself in the lead pack, and sometimes that's all it takes, is to put yourself in position to strike should anything happen in front of you, and you can try and claim that victory at the very end.
And right behind that 31 is Chevrolet Camaro number 12 in the pits news car of Cameron Caldwell. We have talked about him the past couple of weeks, but not much discussion about him tonight. He's been one of those drivers who has that clean race car, and he's just kind of been hanging in the pack. He's been just waiting for his time to shine. He's been in good positions at many moments. He hasn't been involved in any incident, so he's been clear of all the chaos, and I think that's kind of one of the situations for here at Daytona, kind of just survive and advance. Cameron Caldwell just keeping himself still. He's one of the playoff drivers, so he's definitely one of the guys thinking about Darlington next week and how to approach that. Just kind of keeping his race simple here at Daytona and maintaining himself, currently sitting P3.
And Wayne Grassy is in his mirror right there, and he is seemingly 16th. So behind them for position, the next car back then would be Kevin Consistency Steele. Again, we haven't talked much about him tonight, but he has been up front. We've seen him up in the top 5 a couple times. He's done great on pit road. He's had no issues on pit road, and he's got one of the cleanest cars out there. You look at the bumpers of all of these cars around him, and they're all crinkled up, they're all beat up, but Kevin Steele's car, it's in mint condition, and that's something that happens when you have the utter consistency that this man possesses.
And then right behind the 44 is the 53 with a competitor soda brand, and Pepsi, the 53 of McRae, currently sitting P5. He has also been one of the drivers with cleaner cars. He has a little bit of damage to the rear end and the spoiler, but he has been able to, it really hasn't harmed him too much. We saw him up top trying to make some moves early on with Cecil Green in the 07, and he wasn't really successful. He's also been one of those drivers that's just been hanging around in the second pack. He's also one of the playoff drivers, so he's been one of those drivers just to keep his race simple, just to keep his race clean, and for the most part, just stay there to the end. Don't really make any crazy moves, not to be too aggressive, just kind of focus your mind on Darlington next week. Right now here at Daytona, just kind of handle business for the most part.
Rich Petrucco is behind him in P6. He was involved in the accident early on in the lead pack, working through a damaged car, and now trying to keep that car out of the pits and maybe make up some track position by staying out, Ken.
Yeah, a bunch of drivers also doing the same. We saw a couple of drivers head down pit road, and now they've been, staying out for the most part. Hixenbaugh has been doing so as well. And we talked about the 49 of Cecil Green. He stayed out, so he got lapped, but he actually got unlapped working with Hixenbaugh to the high side a little bit earlier. So those drivers were working together. Cecil Green is able to unlap himself now in front of Hixenbaugh, so they will continue to work together 1 and 2, and they'll try to do something else. So we're going to try and get this situation with the video, at least the stream, underway. And for the most part, we're just going to try to get back to the action here at Daytona. We're closing in on just less than, I'd say, 15 laps to go until we get the checkered flag for this one right now, Andre. And if you're one of those drivers, like we mentioned, Preston McRae, drivers like Kevin Steele, those drivers in those groups kind of staying out for the most part, do you turn up the aggressive number? Do you kind of start to get a little more risky? You start to try to make a little more moves? Or maybe you're just at the point just kind of keeping yourself stable, not really concerned about the race win at this point?
Well, at this point, I think you got it right. You turn up the aggression. The laps are winding down. I think some of these guys have started to realize that they can't make it to the end. They're going to have to pit. And at that point, you might as well drive as hard as you can, make up as much time as you can. And John Delaney is going to make a crazy lunge to the outside with a 31. And he is still down, I believe. No, okay, John Delaney is on the lead lap, so he's going to make a crazy big pass on the outside now, tucking in behind the number 7 of Wayne Grassy, and ahead of them it's a lapped car and Cameron Stone slightly off pace. It would appear as though he's going to take the low line. The leaders are going to have to go around the top to get around him. John Delaney's opting to stay behind him for a very long time. He's only going to dive out as soon as he gets to him. He's doing that so that he can use the draft. Now Eric Wineland working together with John Delaney on the high side with the 7 car leading that high side pack as they work their way around that lapped car of Cameron Stone. But right now, it is a complete cluster of cars, some of them a lap down, some of them not, and they are all battling it out regardless. The pit sequence continues as we have our video feed back, and we're focused in on Bryson Hixenbaugh right behind that 49 machine, Ken.
Yeah, it's not changed. He has been with that 49 ever since the pit cycle started, where a couple drivers went down, and you see the amount of separation between him and the drivers behind. And in this camera shot, you don't really see anyone behind that 63, so they're still working together, the 63 now, and he's in prime position at the moment, because although the 49 is a lap car, position is not too much of a factor. He has the opportunity to save fuel now that he hasn't really had the opportunity to for most of that final stage. We mentioned that he was full throttle, he was losing more fuel than the rest of this field at what he was going to do out front, but he got behind this 49 ever since, and now that he has the draft to his advantage, he can lay off the throttle a little more, save a little more fuel. That could potentially help him going into the rest of this race all the way to the finish with just 10 laps to go, because if he's able to save enough, he won't have to deal with going down pit road and losing time. He won't have to deal with drivers maybe making the undercut, making the overcut, drivers getting position off of it, as Rich Petrucco just got out of pit road there in the 27 machine. There is the second group we're seeing, led by Dave Fugue in the number 04, and they're 33 seconds back at the moment, but they're slowly gaining, possibly, with the amount of cars they have in this group. They might be gaining on Hixenbaugh, but the question is, how long can it take, and will it be enough to be there at the end, or will Hixenbaugh ever go down pit road?
I think that remains to be seen. I have no idea if he's going to have enough fuel, but I tell you who didn't. It was Eric Wineland and John Delaney. It was a splash and go for both of those drivers. They made their way down pit road about a lap and a half ago. They came down pit road. It was just a splash and go. They were in their stall for maybe about 4 seconds apiece, and then out they went, and they have linked up. Eric Wineland giving the bumper to John Delaney, pushing him as hard as he can, trying to make up some time. But I think at this point, those who pitted are simply hoping for a caution, because if by some miracle Bryson Hixenbaugh is good on fuel and he can make it to the end, then that is going to absolutely squash their plans for trying to pit and make it out ahead of them. So it's going to be interesting to see. I have no idea if he can make it, but he's definitely trying, Ken.
And this is helping him even more. You see Danny Mayan and the 162 of Zach Probst. Those drivers were in the top 10. Those drivers went down pit road, and Hixenbaugh now in position to lap them both. So if he's able to do that, he's making even more of a cushion for himself, that even if he loses all that fuel, they're 4 wide. They're trying to get around Cameron Stone and Rich Petrucco. They were constantly going around there. They went 4 wide. That was a very, very scary moment for that 63 car. That was probably what you did not want to see, going 4 wide. Potential cause for an incident maybe, but luckily everyone was able to get around clean, and nothing really came out of that, and Hixenbaugh will stay behind the 49 of Cecil Green. But like I was mentioning, if that 63 is able to lap him like he's doing right now, this is the best thing for that 63 if he's able to save some gas, because if he's able to save and he's able to lap these guys at the same time, he won't really lose too much time from the rest of these guys, and it'll be less drivers that he has to contend with unless a yellow comes out.
When you're coming up on a lap car, you always hope that they're going to give you the lane that you want, but it's not always easy to communicate exactly what you want with a lap car, and they're doing their best out there, but sometimes situations like that 4 wide happens, and just lucky that the 63 and everybody else following him was able to make it through that unscathed. But again, you're absolutely right. It is better for Bryson Hixenbaugh and anybody behind him if they can get ahead of them and lap those cars, because again, that's a bigger cushion. That's more cars separating them and the guys behind. And if there's a car separating you, then maybe they're going to hold up the guys behind just enough for you to be able to drive away. And right now, that's kind of the key for Hixenbaugh. Try and hang on with these old tires with low fuel and just try to make it to the end, because at this point, Hixenbaugh's committed. If he pits, that's it. That's race over. He's not going to win. So he has to stay out at this point. It's just a matter of trying to conserve and trying to put as much space between him and the cars behind as he physically can.
There's Dave Fugue in the 04, who is all by himself. He's lost a couple of drivers who are working with him. He's going to try to get to the backside of the number 3 car right in front of him in the I think that's a crush machine there right in front of him. So he's going to work with him. Meanwhile, Cameron Caldwell, Kevin Steele, there's Danny Maya and Zach Probst. So they are there in the mix in there as well. And actually, Hixenbaugh is up here, I think, as well. Actually, no, I don't see Hixenbaugh here. So
he has made his way down pit road. Hixenbaugh has made his way down pit road. It was a splash and go, and now he's going to exit. He's got Wayne Grassy in the 7 ahead of him, who's also decided to pit. So unfortunate for him. I think he just started to realize there's no way he's going to make it. It was a valiant effort. He definitely tried to conserve, but man, trying to go 40-plus laps at a plate track like this on one tank is a tall order. And now here comes Dave Fugue, the man who inherited the lead when Bryson Hixenbaugh dipped out, is now down pit road as well. So this completely shakes up the running order. And it doesn't seem like Bryson's close enough to the 7 to get a draft off of him. So he's going to be on his own. And now here comes the cars behind. Coming out of turn 2 onto the backstretch. That is a huge gaggle of cars, and Bryson has no draft help. So before too long, I think they're going to catch him.
And look at the driver who gained so much off of this. Was 1 lap down prior to this entire pit cycle. Cecil Green is now into P number 4. He's right behind Rich Petrucco, and of course Zach Probst and Danny Mine in the 20. He has yet to gone around that 27 to get back with that 2-car pack and be on with the lead lap guys. But he has gained so much off of this. Now with a top 5 effort, possibly to the end of this race, and now with Hixenbaugh trying to hang on behind the 7 of Wayne Grassy, who's 2 laps down. Now they're just 8.4, now 8.1 seconds behind the race leader. So it is a case of whether they're able to catch up to him, and if so, how long will it take, and will Hixenbaugh stay up there through the rest of this race and able to hang on to the checkered flag. We saw this at Dover last week where Tanner Love stayed out, and it was just a matter of whether he was going to get caught or whether he was able to play defensive on those old tires versus the guy drivers with new tires. And that driver on the new tires at the moment was Hixenbaugh. So now things are switched up. Hixenbaugh's now in the situation where he's getting caught on the racetrack, and now he has to try and find a way to stake ahead of these guys, or else they might just swing by, and that will be the race win captured by somebody else that isn't Hixenbaugh. And you'll have to try and do that and try to handle that situation the best way you can. We're on board with Danny Myatt, now just 6.2 seconds. Myatt's got the help, so they're catching slowly, but do they have enough time?
Well, it's 2 to go at the line this time once Bryson exits turn 4. But that gap to second place is closing faster than a Chick-fil-A on Sunday, so he's going to have a battle on his hands if they can get any closer within this white flag lap after this one. 2 to go at the stripe. Now a lap car to the outside of Bryson. Definitely not what he wants to see. A little bit of side draft off of that 3 car is going to hold him up a little bit. And now, hopefully, the 3 car is going to dip down beneath him. Maybe they could work together, I don't know. But the 7 car, Wayne Grassy, behind, not really pushing Bryson too much. Seems to be hanging back a little bit, potentially just riding around. He is a lap down, no reason to really push it too hard. But the 3 car is going to dip down on the bottom. So now we got 3 cars as they approach another lap car. That's Victor Williams in the 07 going another lap down. So with 3 cars in the pack, that's going to mean this gap is going to close up a little bit slower. And as they come out of turn 4, when they cross the stripe, it's going to be a white flag.
White flag for Bryson Ixenbaugh. Will he have enough time to stick out front? The 7 of Wayne Grassy and the 3 of Brian Mabry are going to stick them two, but a little bit of separation between Ixenbaugh and those two right there, as now they can see the 20 of Danny Myatt and the 162 can see Ixenbaugh going into 1 and 2 for the final time. 3.8 seconds separate those drivers, Ixenbaugh and Myatt and Probst. It's just a matter of how much time they will have and how much distance they can cover and how much distance they can gain ground on to gain on that 63, but it's not looking good at the moment. 3.2 seconds now as Cameron Caldwell goes down pit road. They're 3 wide for P number 2, Cecil Green, Danny Myatt, and Zach Probst. That's going to allow Ixenbaugh a wrecking for P number 3, P number 2. Cecil Green will survive out of that one, but Bryson Ixenbaugh will come to the tri-oval, take win number 11 of the Galaxy Cup Series here at Daytona International Speedway. Already locked into the playoffs. A stressful moment for Ixenbaugh, but another phenomenal win for him in that 63 team. Danny Myatt will come a little bit short from Cecil Green. Zach Probst with heavy damage will finish in the top 5 as well. And Bryson Ixenbaugh, win number 11, going into the playoffs. Lots of momentum gain.
Man, what a finish for second place there. Obviously, Bryson Ixenbaugh set sail for the win there, but man, that second place battle, I didn't expect them to go 3 wide, and then they did. But Cecil Green obviously bringing it home second. Danny Myatt finishing 3rd. Jack Durham finishing 4th. Zach Probst 5th. Kevin's Consistency stealing 6th. Delaney in 7th. Wineland 8th. Cody Bird in 9th, up in the top 10 after a rough night early on. And in P10, it's going to be Cam Caldwell.
And what an unbelievable finish for those drivers there. Ixenbaugh with his 11th win is going to celebrate here at Daytona. What a drive for him. I know he was probably worried about the drivers behind him, whether they were able to gain ground, but Ixenbaugh played the game perfectly, and he was able to stay out front just long enough to capture the checkered flag. Here's he's going to burn it down on the front straightaway in the tri-oval grass, celebrating another win to a dominant season by that 63 in high side racing. Those drivers another win to their resume coming here at Daytona. We'll take a look at the full race results, see exactly where everyone finished. Of course, your race winner, Ixenbaugh, finishes P number 1, 11th win. Cecil Green comes home in 2nd, and Andre, an amazing fight there for P2. Probably not expecting them to crash there in a 3 and 4, but nonetheless, Cecil Green gets the best of all of that. Danny Myatt comes home 3rd. Jack Durham gets ahead of Zach Probst for 4th, and Probst will finish into the top 5. Kevin Steele will finish in 6th. Another great run for him. You mentioned consistency, his nickname, continuing the consistency here tonight. Jonathan Delaney into 7th. Eric Wineland 8th. Cody Bird finishes 9th. And Cameron Caldwell, who went down pit road right as the white flag was signaled, he will finish in this top 10.
All right, and behind them, you got Preston McCrae in P11, Ryan Samuelson, Rich Petrucco, Dave Fugue, battling internet issues all night long, still managed to capture a top 15. Wayne Grassy behind him, Cameron Stone, Brian Mabry, Alex Princeton, dominant early on, tough break, not too far into the second stage, unfortunately for him. Behind him, it's Brandon Pearson rounding out your top 20. It's Nicholas Weatherby. So, what a race that was, Ken. Bryson's still burning it down. You can tell he's excited because he is still out there doing donuts now, going backwards probably into his pit stall. But we're going to have more post-race action for you guys coming up shortly, and some interviews with our top 3 podium finishers, hopefully. And yeah.
We're going to take a look at what exactly happened on that final lap. We saw Ixenbaugh obviously by himself. There was Wayne Grassy and Brian Mabry in the mix as well. Those were lap cars. Ixenbaugh had a clear run to the finish line, but it was very, very rough for P number 2. It was the 49 of Cecil Green, Danny Myatt in the number 20, and it was the 162 of Zach Probst. They were all together there within the group. You're looking at them in the replay there. Here are the 20 and the 162. Here comes the 49. They're 3 wide down the max straightaway. They're able to make enough space. You see Danny Maya trying to get the side draft off the 162 into turn number 3. It pinches down even more, and the 20 gets into the 162, and he goes hard into the outside wall. The 49 was able to get by. There's the 162, and then soon enough, he gets passed by the 217 of Jack Durham for 4th. We'll take an onboard look at what Cecil Green saw out of this. This was right there, right in front of him, and he was just smacking the wall, and he suffered minimal damage there, so he was able to survive, and he had the momentum to continue his speed going all the way to the finish line at the end of that one. But what a wild turn of events for happening for P2, and that was a wild finish. I was expecting them to try and work together, but I think at that point they knew the gap was too large to get to Hicksonball at that point in turn 3 and 4, so they were probably just thinking, why not go for P2, get positions along the way, and get some extra points going into Darlington next week. So that was exactly what happened for P2. But meanwhile, Hicksonball continues to celebrate 11th win of the season. When we come back, we'll have more coverage live from the Daytona International Speedway and the Galaxy Cup Series round number 26. We'll get the interviews with the top drivers. And of course, your race winner. And we got more coverage coming for you soon. And we'll try to wrap things up here at Daytona. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. We got more coverage coming next. Welcome back to the World Center of Racing in the Daytona International Speedway, where we have had a chaotic evening, and it all ended with Bryson Hicksonball taking his 11th win of the season in the regular season ender, going into next week at Darlington. We'll bring the driver in victory lane, Hicksonball. We'll bring him into the booth, see exactly his emotions after taking his 11th win. And Bryson, welcome to the 3xTV booth. You got a copy with us first of all?
Yes, I do.
All right, Bryson, 11th win comes here at Daytona. You went a couple weeks without a win. You won at Michigan, and now you come back here at Daytona. You pick up your 11th win. First of all, I think the biggest question that we have to ask is, what was going through your mind mostly through that final stint? I know the drivers are going down pit road. There was a lot of differing strategies, and you stayed out for the most part, and you were in the front of that group, and then you went behind Cecil Green, and from there on, you were able to really control this. Tell us really what was your kind of strategy, or what was really going on through your mind and trying to adapt as the race continued to progress, going to the final 10 laps.
Yeah, where that last caution came, it was really going to be tough to make it all the way, so I just decided that I'm not going to save fuel at all and just push it. About midway through that, I think it was, Eric Wineland was in fourth, and he lost the draft trying to save fuel, and it broke the top three away. And from then on, I just knew that it was a race between catching those guys before I pit, so that if they did make it, that I stayed in front of them. We ended up passing Cecil there with a damaged car after he pit. And I was able to get up behind him and push forward to get some faster lap times in and catch up quicker. And it worked out for me that I was able to also pit with Wayne right as we were catching that lead pack. So I had draft after pitting and was able to stay out front.
And you stayed out front. You picked up a win here tonight, and now we have concluded this regular season. You're at the top of the playoff picture. Going into next week at Darlington, what are your thoughts going into that one for the first race of the playoffs? And what are your thoughts pretty much going into the rest of those races all the way to the championship finale?
It's going to be interesting with the points reset. I've gained like a lot of playoff points, so it's not completely even field, but it's still more treacherous than it has been. A bad race or two can put me on the bubble, and that's really what the playoffs are for.
All right, Bryson, I know it's going to be obviously it's going to be tough, obviously, in the playoffs. I know there's going to be a lot of things to consider with the points reset, but congratulations on the win here at Daytona. Before we let you go, you got any sponsors, any teams, or pretty much anyone you'd like to thank for making tonight's effort possible?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the guys at Nexus for the great setups the last few weeks. I joined their team about a month ago. First race was Michigan, and they've been great. Great setups, great working with them in the official series. Jesse Atchison, James Mullins, Patrick Moose, Zach Hudson, all those guys over there. And then I'd also like to thank Brian France for creating the playoffs and wiping away my points lead. Thank you for that, Brian.
All right, Bryson. Well, congratulations again on your 11th win of the season. And it must feel good to end the regular season with a win out of all things, considering how dominant you've been this season. And, of course, we'll see you next week and here throughout the playoffs. And we wish you luck going into the playoffs as the points leader next week at Darlington.
Thank you, guys. Hope to be talking to you again next week.
Bryson Hicksonball out of the booth, 11th win, comes here at Daytona. He is finishing P number 1. We'll slip back to P number 2, where the driver of the 49 had a wild ride through this race, kind of had an up and down night, lost his teammate along the way, mustered a second place finish out of this. He is here with Andre Grambush.
All right, Cecil Green, you got a copy, buddy?
Yes, sir.
Man, the only way I could describe your race was a roller coaster. You were up front, you were in the back, you were up front, and ultimately, through some adversity at the end there after some contact, you still brought it home P2. You were just really determined to get a great finish tonight, and you pulled it off. Walk me through how you did it, buddy.
Well, we had been working on our strategy because we knew there was only going to be two of us. I was looking at everybody's haulers there, and 3, 4 people in every one of them, and I knew we would be on the short end of the stick on help. But anyway, had a great plan. I could get to the front even after I got damaged, got back to the front, had a super fast car, with F5 Motorsports, and me and Victor, I wasn't going to run the race. I was going to go to a wedding, but ended up going to the police station, giving a deposition and filing restraining orders. so I ended up coming to the race anyway. So I wasn't planning on racing, but I had fun. You know, it's just aggravating. You know, I don't know what caused all of it, but just like on the last lap there, if them two would have stayed together, they could have held me off. But I knew I had a faster single car, and you know, I almost cleared them by myself going into 3, and then the guy in the middle, the 20, got down on the 162 and turned them both up in. You know, and they both come up into me, but I got the better end of that stick, finished second. So I had, you know, that's all I could do. We had a good car though.
All right. I mean, definitely looked like a great car. We mentioned you were running the high side all night long. Looked like that's where you were comfortable. Not a lot of guys are able to be that committed to the outside and still keep the speed that you and your teammate managed to find. You know, halfway through the race, you lost your teammate in an accident there. Can you kind of walk me through the shift in mindset between having somebody who you were able to work with to suddenly being on your own?
Well, I mean, I knew once Victor got involved in that wreck that I was going to be in trouble. So that's why you see me. I went down, took no tires, and just added a little bit of fuel, got off pit road. And if I would have had somebody come out with me then, the race was in the bag. I was wanting to get interviewed before the end of the race here. You know, I was trying because anyway, but that's if I would have had a teammate or anybody would have went down with me, I'd have been 1-2 right there because I had like a 8-9 second gap on the leaders, and me being by myself, they was able to run me down. But you know, then Bryson hooked up with me, and we pulled away from that pack that he was in. And Bryson went but 4.8 in front of me coming on that last lap. If I'd have had that 9-second gap during that pit stop, I'd have walked away with it. Or you know, whoever would have been behind me would have been between us. But you know, you got to, you know, that's the thing about this. You got to be able to change strategies at, you know, at the moment, because you never know how it can go. And I've just been doing this so long and know what I need to do. And I brought it home second.
Absolutely. Well, a great run. And again, you mentioned having to adapt, and you did a great job of it. Congratulations on your second podium in a row. And we're looking forward to hopefully talking with you again next week.
Oh, I look forward to it. Got a great car for Darlington next week. It's going to be a long one. And Darlington, you know, that's a driver's track. You know, I'm looking forward to it. Got a rocket for there, too. Just like I told y'all last week, we had a rocket tonight.
Absolutely. All right, Carlos, we're going to have to move on to our next interview, but we do appreciate your time. Or not Carlos, Cecil. I'm sorry. C names. There's 2 C names in this chat. I apologize.
Hey, can I say
Cecil.
one more thing? Can I say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
I like I said, I want to thank F5 Motorsports, Nick Lockett, for everything he does and everything you guys doing up here. You know, because this ain't an easy thing y'all doing in the broadcast. You know, y'all have to talk about a lot of stuff. You have to flip a switch. So great job by y'all and Galaxy Racing League. You know, but anyway, see y'all next week, buddy.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it, Cecil.
All right.
All right, that was your second place finisher, Cecil Green. On to our 4th place finisher, Jack Durham. Kenneth, I believe he's yours.
All right, Jack, first of all, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy with us? Oh, Jack, I don't think I can hear. You got us in the booth?
Tim4, how's it going?
All right, everything's good, man. I know you must probably feel good after capturing P4. I know things are very hectic up right in front of you with Probst and Danny Myatt and Cecil Green. All of them were tangling together off turn 4, but I know you were able to capture P4. But before we get to that situation on the final lap, just first of all, just walk us through exactly how your race went. I know you kind of had an up and down night. I think you were kind of in the first group. There was a lot of things you kind of had to deal with around you. I know there were certain people you were working with. Lots of different things taking into factor today's race. Just first of all, walk us through your experience behind the wheel here at Daytona with everybody around you.
It went pretty good, honestly. Me and Dalton Mobley were teamed up, and we were going to work all that out, but he ended up getting wrecked out in that first big wreck. I got a little bit of damage from it, which is what slowed me down. Had to work real hard to keep up with the pack, but managed to just throw a lot of tape on it and watch the temperatures, keep up with the pack, and If I hadn't had that damage, I think I may have had a chance because I would have been able to go with the fast guys and go with the pit strategy. But with that damage, I was sort of boxed into having to do a fuel strategy. So with having to do that fuel strategy and with the damage, I wasn't able to go as soon as I'd like to. By my calculations, I should have been able to go about 3 to go with how much I was saving, but I wasn't able to with the damage I had. Wasn't much damage, but it was a little bit. It was enough. But I managed to pull off P4 when I was able to go about a lap to go. I went on by the pack I was in, past Kevin, and started sputtering into turn 1 after I caught the start finish line.
And Jack, you mentioned the fuel strategy, and that's another conversation to come into play that really played a factor into this race. It was the fuel strategy that happened at the end. No caution to really split this in the middle, and drivers really weren't secured a guarantee with their fuel tank and making it all the way to the end of lap 160 ever since the caution came out with about 43 laps to go. But coming from your perspective, I know there was a lot of things changing around you. There was drivers taking different pit strategies. Was there really anything that kind of threw you kind of a curveball to left anything, kind of a curveball to your strategy, or really anything that kind of changed everything up, made you adapt through the rest of this race to try and get something out of the strategy?
Not particularly. I was just hoping Ryan would have got closer to me and gave me a little push, because I never had anybody behind me the whole run. So all I had was draft on the front to save fuel. If I'd had somebody pushing me as well, I would have been able to save fuel. I tried to get a couple people to get behind me, but they wouldn't stay close. Besides that, when the other people went to pit, I just knew I had to stay out because I'd already committed to the fuel strategy. I was already down to running about 185 out of the 200 we can run here. So I just had to stick to that strategy, and that was the plan as soon as that last caution came out, was to just make it on fuel.
All right, Jack. Well, nonetheless, a P4 finish must feel great, especially to end the regular season going into the playoffs. I know you're not a playoff driver, but nonetheless, I know you and a lot of other drivers are looking to get the rest of these races at least to try and get wins and get something and, try to end the season out on a high note. But before we let you go, you got any teams, anybody, or just pretty much anybody you'd like to thank for making tonight's effort possible?
I'd just like to thank the people that helped me over on my Discord server build my setups. I release them publicly, so my setups are always available for any of the drivers in Galaxy or on iRacing service to use. The setup I used tonight was on my Discord. So I'd just like to thank the people that helped me build those setups.
All right, well, we thank you for taking the time to talk with us, Jack. And, of course, going into Darlington, I know it's going to be a tough challenge going into the next couple of tracks, very different tracks from what we saw here at Daytona. So congratulations on the P4 finish, and we hope to see you from here on out to the rest of the season, and we wish you luck.
All right, thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Jack Durham out of the booth, and that concludes the interviews. We weren't able to get Danny Myatt in the booth. He was in none of the voice chat, so we weren't able to talk with him about his finish in P number 3. But nonetheless, we got them finalized. Andre, we're packing out of Daytona, going to one of the more tougher tracks on the cars, the Darlington Raceway, one of the more challenging tracks. Like Cecil mentioned in the interview, it's a driver's track. You have to really kind of have that driver's skill to get around Darlington efficiently and be one of those dominant drivers. What are we really expecting next week now that we're going into the first round of the playoffs?
Chaos, Ken. Utter chaos. First round of the playoffs at one of the most difficult tracks on the circuit. People are going to be trying to get that win. All of those 16 playoff drivers want to get that win as soon as possible to lock themselves into the next round, to make sure that if they have a bad race in the coming weeks, it's not going to affect them and they're going to be able to continue on. The thing is, when you're pushing that hard at a track like Darlington, that's so narrow, it's so difficult to drive, it is so easy to make a mistake. And if somebody does make a mistake and you're anywhere near it, you have nowhere to go. There's no runoff. There's very little apron. It's a tough track, and I am excited to see how these guys manage to navigate it next week.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I know Darlington will be a tough challenge for these drivers. Just like you mentioned, there's not much space on the apron. There's not really much space of runoff anywhere. So if you make a mistake, it could be drastic to your run, and it's going to affect the playoff drivers and, of course, their mindsets going into the round before we start to get to elimination all the way to the championship race. We appreciate and thank each and every one of you for tuning into the broadcast. Very, very chaotic race here at Daytona International Speedway under the books. Big thanks to SimTV for providing the camera packages and, of course, providing the best looks of these virtual race cars as they went around this track. Congratulations to Bryson Ixtabal, number 11 win here at Daytona International Speedway. So for everyone in the Galaxy Cup Series for making this league possible, and for everyone that makes this league together, we appreciate you, of course, here on 3Y TV, and for all of us here at 3Y TV, for Carlos Costa for pushing the buttons for the broadcast, and Andre Grandbush. My name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long from Daytona Beach. We'll see you at Darlington Raceway next week, where we go playoff racing all the way to the championship. Stay safe and good night from Daytona.